got to be really difficult for you as you're learning with us what's happening here this morning.
Well, sure. These are all your friends, people that you meet, people you do business with. It's a place where you select to raise a family because you think it's a safe and caring community, and it still is. But you don't expect things like this happening in your neighborhood, if indeed this is what's happened here today. It's tough to see because you know the firemen, you know the police officers, you know these guys and women that are out here trying to keep everybody health and safety, and to have something like this occur is very strange. It's certainly out of the norm for this area.
We can see, Jim, by our shot with Chopper 9 that there's what looks like an abandoned wheelchair right out front of by the awning there at Allina Health clinic. So, which would imply maybe that something had to happen quickly to get people out of there, but you can see that just kind of eerily sitting there by itself. We understand also the ATF is on the way, and as you said, Jim, you could see that Wright County is there and Buffalo Police certainly, but we have noticed that all morning as well since we've been covering this story, that it's a perimeter outside of the clinic, and it does make you wonder if what has happened has already transpired, and now it will be up to more of an expertise of folks in law enforcement who go in there to account for what happened in a forensic kind of way.
Right. The only information I've heard is third hand, and someone just told me that they were coming to the clinic and two nurses came out, hopped in their car, and told them to drive, and they drove away from the scene. And I'm trying to get to that person so Paul can perhaps interview them and get their side of the story. But it does sound like it was a very scary situation, and like you said, it's very strange that no one has approached the building. You know, we don't know why, if there's something else there, if there's a situation that, you know, they're not quite sure of what they have here yet or whatever, but no one is even in the driveway of police vehicles or any officers walking the perimeter. I'm sitting probably a block and a half away, and most of these first responders are just sitting in their vehicle right now, waiting for instruction, I would guess.
Mm-hmm. Jim, can you help us understand where this clinic is in Buffalo for people who may not be as familiar with that area?
Yes, Highway 55 is the main thoroughfare through town, and this is just a block off. It's right behind a strip mall that has a Wells Fargo and a bunch of small chain restaurants. And this is a newer building. It was just built in the last 2 years. It's a branch of Allina Health, and it's just basically was built at a part of an old farm. So they bought the land and built this here, and it's been here for a couple of years. And so traffic is getting by on Highway 55. They've just closed the side streets, so traffic is able to get by. And if you're coming through the area, you can get through it. They don't have the main thoroughfares shut down at this time.
And Jim, Skyfox 9 is now giving us some pretty close-up images of the facade to the front of the clinic, and you can see what appears to be a blown-out window on the side and some debris, and you can see the wind is blowing in the blinds into the clinic, which would stand to reason to what Paul Bloom reported to us earlier in one of his trusted sources, that there were multiple bombs as well, as not just the shooting, but multiple bombs, which is possible to have blown out a window. Certainly a bullet could do that as well, but it does stand to reason that his source telling him that, that bears out with what we were just seeing live from Skyfox 9.
In what looks like maybe a lobby area. Go ahead, Jim.
Right, and I'm looking at the same thing. I'm sitting right in the parking lot across from the hospital, or the clinic rather, and you know, that makes sense as to why the first responders are not approaching the building, because they're not quite sure what else is in there that could cause harm. So apparently they've gotten everybody out that they can, and now they're just waiting to see how to approach this building in case there are other devices. That may be the reason why everybody is staying such an extreme distance away from the facility.
Right.
Jim, as far as you can tell, law enforcement obviously have set up this perimeter around the clinic, but have you heard firsthand, or do you know of any other scenes in that area where law enforcement may be?
I've only heard rumors. I haven't been able to drive over there and check out, so I don't want to go down that road, but they're probably checking to figure out who this suspect was, where he's been, and so I'm assuming that they'll be moving around the town to try to figure out more of the backstory of what led to this incident.
Yeah, we can see from this live picture the side windows blown out and then some of the windows in the front too. I noticed when you were talking earlier, it almost looked like someone was raising the blind up and down, but that was likely the wind that was blowing it up and down, because that window in the front there has also been broken. But what a scene there for a town, as you said, Jim. You know a lot of the people there in Buffalo. It's a very close-knit community, and to have something like this, it's really got to be jarring and very shocking for people there.
Well, no doubt. I mean, this parking lot is filled with cars from, I'm assuming, people that live here in town trying to figure out what happened. You know, family, friends, people work there that live here in this community. And, you know, nothing really happens much in Wright County, and that's kind of the way people like it. You know, it's been that way. It's been a community that respects each other. It's a welcoming area. You know, anybody who moves in, you're right there to help them. What can I do for you? You know, what can we make you feel good about, feel welcome, and, you know, what can we help you with? Where's this store? Where's that? Oh, this guy's the best plumber. Call this guy. You know, it's that kind of a place.
Sure.
And to see this happen here is very strange and certainly does not fit the MO of the community that I've been here for 25, 30 years, I guess.
Give Jim a quick breather here. Just reading some of the information that we have been able to confirm, which again is not a whole lot at this point. A lot of rumors and speculation, but so far this is what we've been able to confirm. Police responded in Buffalo to what authorities are describing as a gun incident at the Allina Health Clinic in Buffalo involving multiple victims. According to the Wright County Dispatch, this call came in shortly before 11 o'clock of this gun incident at that clinic that you've been looking at at 755 Crossroads Campus Drive. Again, dispatch confirming multiple victims, didn't provide any information regarding their injuries. Our Paul Bloom, who should be at the scene hopefully by now, we'll check back in with him as soon as we can. According to his trusted sources there on the ground, he says there were multiple bombs involved as well. Several people, according to his sources, who are in critical condition at this point. So those are the basics of what we can confirm right now, and then what also our reporter Paul Bloom is hearing from his trusted law enforcement sources on the ground.
And then what we can visually see at the building itself with Skyfox 9, and that is that it appears the windows have been blown out in the front of the clinic there, the front facade of the clinic. We understand that, of course, Buffalo police are there. Wright County Sheriff's Office is there as well. You saw also Buffalo Fire. But again, they're around the perimeter. They're not getting near the building, which makes you kind of ask questions as to why they're not going in the building. We heard from Paul that hopefully from Jim that people have been ushered out of the building. We heard Jim telling us that there was a case of a couple of nurses who got into some car and said, just drive, get out of here. So obviously it was a volatile scene. But again, if there were multiple bombs, as Paul's source had told him, that could be a reason as to why there is just a perimeter around the clinic, and they are not broaching the clinic now because of fear that there could be a device that could go off. And so that's more than likely, you might go to that conclusion that that's why there is just a perimeter around the clinic at this point.
As we wait for more information, I want to ask our producer Ted if Paul Bloom is at the scene. Okay, they're trying to connect with Paul as we speak. So far, he's been the one who's been able to make the most connections with law enforcement sources to try to give us some insight into what's been happening here this morning, because as we've been showing you now for the last 30 minutes, a very almost eerily quiet scene, really nobody milling about here. But the description of what happened here about an hour and a half ago is horrific. So we just want to wait on some of those details as they are confirmed. But again, multiple people shot, the possibility here of multiple bombs that went off at this Allina clinic in Buffalo this morning, call coming in just before 11 o'clock. Hennepin County backup is on the way. The ATF is now on the way. And I think we want to check back in here on the,
All right.
at the
Yep.
scene.
Paul, and are you at the scene, or have you learned more information? And tell us what you know.
Yeah, I just, again, still on the road. A bit of a drive for me this morning, but trying to stay in touch with our sources on this one. I haven't been listening to our coverage, so I don't know where we are, in terms of what you guys have said. I was on the phone with Minneapolis police. They are confirming they're sending and have sent multiple units up here to assist with what they have described as a, quote, mass casualty event. Again, the terms just, you shudder when the mass casualty disaster, some of the terminology I'm getting from law enforcement sources with direct knowledge of what is happening in and around that Allina Health Clinic campus at this point. I will just say there have been a couple of squads steaming past me on the interstate, lights flashing, with no interest in any of the traffic, but clearly my thought would be heading to this awful scene that is unfolding. Again, being told, at least initially, victims totaling at least near double digits, if not more. Gunfire, bombs. 1.2 had been detonated. They were worried about a third one. Again, Minneapolis police not confirming that it is their bomb squad en route. Those sources have told me that's exactly the unit that was sent up here to Buffalo in Wright County. Again, being told the city of Buffalo, their police department, and the Wright County Sheriff's Office, lead agencies on this. Everyone else coming in as mutual aid, assisting in what is, again, being described as a heartbreaking mass casualty event here. Victims, at least 9, double digits potentially. And we're just continuing to wait for sort of a formal statement by law enforcement on scene there, what exactly they are dealing with in and around the Allina Healthcare Clinic.
And Paul, we could see from Skyfox 9 that it appears the windows have been blown out of the front entrance area to the clinic, which stands to reason with what you'd heard from your source about 2 bombs going off. You said they're worried about a third. Is that why they're not entering the building at this point and there's just a perimeter around the scene? Can you shed more light on that?
I can't quite connect all of those dots at this point, just based on the timing of my phone calls and what I'm imagining is just happening on that scene. Again, I had been told early on that we were talking about 3 bombs, 2 detonated, a third was in question. I got to be honest, that was probably about a half hour ago I had that conversation, so I just do not have the absolute latest, and we want to provide our viewers, of course, with the latest information. And in terms of connecting these dots, I can't imagine the worry, the concern for those families with loved ones in and around this clinic at this point this morning, now as we hit early afternoon. So, I mean, I will continue to gather minutes from the scene, and we'll be able to kind of tackle it on the ground at that point. But again, just wanting to reiterate the mutual aid that's gone in. I believe seeing several law enforcement vehicles speeding towards the scene from the interstate as you come out of the heart of the metro area and head to the northwest metro here. And we will just wait. And again, these casualty numbers, initially I had been told 9, 10 in that neighborhood, several in critical condition known at that point. But again, as this situation develops, if it did take place deep inside this clinic, as law enforcement works their way inside and starts clearing rooms and offices, what is found, I just don't know. And until we get that sort of what we call that official briefing. I can continue to nibble around the edges with sources, but right now I certainly understand the gravity of the situation out there, and this is one of those moments. I think back to racing to the accent signage shooting all those years ago, that Minneapolis office place, a shooting scene, and what developed there. We just again continue to wish everyone the health and safety out there, and we'll continue to work the angles. But again, a mass casualty event described by one law enforcement source that I trust, who, with intimate knowledge of what's going on there, describing it as a disaster this morning.
All right, Paul, we're taking a look again at the perimeter outside of the Allina Clinic. You can see the local first responders, law enforcement lined up, blocking off that area. And we believe that it is contained to just this area right now. But again, Paul Bloom telling us from his trusted law enforcement sources that this may have been a mass casualty event. At least 9 people, possibly into the double digits, are victims here in some way, shape, or form. We don't have any confirmation on the extent of the injuries. I believe Paul said his source did tell him several maybe in critical condition right now. And just a few moments ago, and this is a kind of a map to let you know where this Allina Clinic is, as we've been hearing this morning, just right off of 55, just about a block off of a local downtown area, and a place that is maybe a couple of years old, an offshoot of the hospital. Was built a couple of years ago, and this is a place where it's a family medical clinic, a specialty clinic, so they do things like physical exams, vaccinations, pediatric care here, and we understand that a total of 10 doctors and nurse practitioners are providers at this particular clinic.
And we're hearing just now that North Memorial has multiple victims at its hospital. We're just getting that word from this scene. We're also understanding the FBI is on the way. We knew the ATF was getting ready to head there as well. So now the FBI will be joining the ATF as well. And that goes to what Paul was saying earlier, as far as bombs being involved here. Not only possible shooting, but bombs being involved. From what he understands from his source, 3 bombs, 2 that were detonated, 1 that may not have gone off, which might be the reason that there's just a perimeter now of law enforcement and fire around the scene there at the clinic and not entering the building. But you can see clearly by this live picture right now from Skyfox 9 that a couple of the windows there, you can see the blinds blowing in and out from time to time depending on the wind. There at the front entrance to the clinic, that some of the windows have been shattered and blown out.
And again, we're working to get law enforcement sources on the phone here to confirm any information we can. Again, we understand that the suspect, we have confirmed the suspect is in custody, and it doesn't appear that there is an additional threat. This is looks like a tweet from one of our producers, Molly. She says multiple victims reported at this incident at the Allina Health Clinic in Buffalo, reports of an active shooter. One witness tells me she also heard multiple bombs go off, and local parents say that nearby schools are on lockdown. So the reports of hearing multiple bombs go off would line up with what our reporter Paul Bloom has been telling us this morning, that his sources tell him that there may have been 3 bombs, 2 that were detonated, and then 1 in question. The ATF on the way, the FBI also on the way, as well as Hennepin County sending backup. So we should learn hopefully a little bit more here in the coming moments.
And again, this is the Allina Health Clinic located at 755 Crossroads in Buffalo. Paul's source telling him that this was a disaster. Quote unquote. And this is from one of his trusted sources in law enforcement telling him that, and some of the other information about double-digit victims in critical condition. And we could see, here's now a live picture, I believe, from on the ground there, where you can see one of the units blocking off the road access to get into that area. Of course, they don't want anyone near it as they get ready to either enter the building. I don't know if it could be the bomb squad at this point, we don't know. But certainly they are keeping a pretty good perimeter around the building and we can see no activity in which anyone is trying to enter that building. Again, breaking news that's been going on now for well over an hour in Buffalo, the Allina Clinic, where we're hearing multiple victims and casualties from a couple of bombs that may have gone off and also shooting. And from what our report has said and our reporting has said, that the person of interest, they have a suspect in custody in this situation there at the Allina Clinic in Buffalo.
So we're looking at an overhead shot from Skyfox 9 right now. We also have been showing you some live pictures from on the ground as well right before this. And I don't know if we can take that shot again. I think we had a shot set up in an area that contains a strip mall that is nearby, about a block or so away. There's that shot. It's hard to tell if that clinic is in that shot or not. But again, you know, Jim Rich, our sports director, and the wife of one of our photojournalists, Jen Coutu, were both on the phone with us here a short time ago. They both live in this community and have lived there for a very long time. And Jim talked about the number of people in the community who have now, you know, tried to understandably drive up, get close to the scene, check out what's happening, because these are their neighbors and the people they do business with, and this is an extremely tight-knit community. You don't expect this kind of thing to happen anywhere, but particularly in a town like this, where Jim says you move here, you know, for the quality of life. And so a very jarring situation for this community of Buffalo, and our thoughts are with everybody who's in that area.
It looks like we've got a tweet here from, it looks like the Minnesota BCA special agents and crime scene personnel are en route to assist the Buffalo Police Department in the investigation of a shooting incident involving multiple victims. So there you see underscored again, multiple victims at that clinic in Buffalo.
I'll ask our producer here if we're able to check back in at all with Jim, or I don't know if Jen is still at the scene. Okay, I understand Jim Rich is doing an interview right now, so we'll check back in with him. Also, this is something we've been noting this morning. You can see the wheelchair that is just sort of abandoned in front of the clinic there. Possibly an indication that that someone had to leave very, very quickly. Our own Jim Rich said that he was told that someone had gone to the clinic in their car, and as they were sitting outside, a couple of what he believes were nurses ran out, jumped in his car, and said, "Just go," and he drove off. So that may be who Jim is interviewing right now. I know he was trying to get that interview. We'll check back in with him in a minute. But just a very calm, eerie scene right now, given what we understand happened an hour and a half ago.
Right, and as you said, Amy, this is a community known to be tight-knit. You wouldn't expect anything of this nature to happen, and we understand Paul Bloom is with us again. And Paul, I take it you've got some more information to share.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Do you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, no, I'm just arriving to the scene can only, you know, continue to reiterate my earlier reporting, the disaster. I'm heading, obviously, I just drove by Buffalo High School. It didn't look like anything unusual there, and I know they've talked about the schools being locked down here. It didn't look like anything visible in terms of my eyeballs. Obviously, now on the edge of the periphery here, starting to see squad cars blocking a good, still about a mile away, and the presence they have right now blocking traffic. So again, just can talk about a mass casualty event, mutual aid that you guys have been reporting, the FBI, the BCA. We just continue to wait official word from law enforcement on what we're dealing with here. But I will continue to gather and get right back here. I should be able to jump in front of the camera here in a couple minutes.
All right, Paul, thank you for that. And we understand that Jen Coutu, who is married to one of our photojournalists here at the station, is a Buffalo resident, and she spoke with someone who was in the clinic. So, Jen, tell us what you've learned.
Yeah, so outside the clinic here in a parking lot nearby, I ended up speaking to a woman, an older woman who was in the clinic at the time of the shooting, and she's obviously upset and in shock. It was a lot, but she was in a, my understanding is she was in an exam room towards the back and the man walked in. I'm not sure where he came from. I don't know what she saw to begin with, but he had walked past, went to the front of the clinic, fired off some shots. She obviously didn't see that part of it, so I don't know anything about where shots were fired or what, but he ended up coming back. Obviously, people got upset when the firearm went off. He ended up going down the clinic hallway again, and more shots were fired. She made it sound like there was maybe 2 or 3 rounds of it happening, and then she actually was probably one of the first ones to call 911 herself. And then before the gentleman left, actually, can't call him a gentleman. Before the man left, he actually called 911 himself. And if I understood her correctly, he actually called 911, reported it, and said, send some ambulances. And he told them that there would be bombs. My understanding was there was 2 found in his hotel room. Again, I'm just out here. I don't know the full details. That's just what I've heard, so I don't want to, cause any speculation, but that's what she said. She hadn't yet talked with the police officers. She's an older lady, at least 65, 70 or more. And I think her adult son had shown up, and they're talking to investigators now.
Jen, did she mention anything about a bomb blast there in the clinic?
No, not in the clinic. I believe it was his hotel room, which is probably a mile from here at the most. But no explosions heard in the clinic. She did hear the guns.
Jen, did she see the suspect well enough to give any sort of description, an age range, or anything about the suspect?
She did describe him. She was talking, there's a local radio station here, and she did end up talking with him for a moment, and she did describe him. I don't know if I completely heard. I think she said, kind of a older with gray hair. It was a man, but I didn't get much of a description, and to be honest, she's pretty shaken up.
Yeah.
And I think as she was, I don't know if she had actually talked about it yet out loud, and so I think as she was talking about it, it became pretty emotional and concerned, obviously.
Yeah. Did she?
It's pretty wild that it's here in a small
Yeah.
town. I don't think people now are starting, there's more and more people kind of in this area, and obviously all the media has made it out here now, so there's a little bit more commotion than there
door and then park and come get her. And within minutes, they were shooting at the front window that, she could have been sitting right there, and has a hard time walking. So that's very scary.
Did you see anybody? Did they see anybody? Did they have any idea of who it was or what their problem was that caused them to do this?
They did not see anyone. They just heard they said 11 shots within a minute. And to show us that it was a shooter, seeing those two front windows shot out, we knew that's what it was and that we had to get out of there.
Okay, Tiffany, well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and thank you for being so helpful in getting those nurses out of the way. You have to be very proud of what you did.
Yeah, like I said, I wish I could do more. They told me I couldn't go back in, so.
Yeah, so that's a story from a first-hand witness that got involved and helped out and maybe even saved some more lives here this afternoon. Back to you guys.
All right, Jim, also hearing the voice there of our photojournalist, John Coutu. We've been hearing from his wife as well today. John and Jen live in that community, as does Jim Rich. So this is a very difficult day for people in that community as well.
We understand that you could see some of the agencies had finally gone into the building. We hadn't seen that since the time we'd been reporting up until recently, where some of the law enforcement folks entered the building. We know FBI and ATF are responding. We read the ATF tweet from earlier saying they were going to be on the scene. And so the other thing we were hearing was about from Paul Bloom and his sources from law enforcement, trusted sources, that there may have been some bombs involved here. Whether there were bombs at the clinic, we can't draw that conclusion, but from what we understand, there may have been bombs possibly at a hotel room. And so, Paul, we've been running down what you've just been talking about, reiterating what you reported earlier. Tell us what you know now and what you've got for us.
Well, right now, finally got to the scene. If you've been listening, I've been checking in from the car, making phone calls as we drove up here. I'm getting my first eyeballs on the scene. I know it's something our viewers have been seeing. You just heard from that incredible witness and the story they were sharing with Jim Rich, but obviously a little bit of look at the perimeter and the clinic up the hill there. But yes, from the get-go, I had been told there were multiple bombs connected to this situation. The initial number I'd heard was 3, with 2 detonated. Again, now we're talking probably an hour ago, and that there was one perhaps still a concern to law enforcement. In fact, confirming with MPD, Minneapolis Police Department sent up teams up here. They wouldn't exactly specify, but my sourcing was telling me that they did send a bomb squad. We know ATF is headed here, if not here already, the FBI. I don't know what the status is of that third bomb, if it went off, if it was rendered, not to be a thing that exploded or anything. But the witness pointing out the shattered windows up ahead there. Witnesses on social media, our producer tweeting out that their witness had heard at least a couple of explosions while the gunfire was happening, 11 shots in a minute. I think that one witness just talked about a harrowing situation. You think about what unfolded here at this Allina Health clinic in Buffalo. Initially, early reports were hearing 9 victims, but that we may not know the full tally. That was very early on in this process. Was law enforcement able to clear out this entire building and really figure out what they were dealing with? Described by a source as a, quote, mass casualty event. I want to, of course, caution that doesn't mean deaths, but certainly means victims, multiple victims here today. So, again, it's probably as close as we can get here in terms of the media. You do see a ground crew walking up there. Don't know exactly. They look more like street-clothed type officials heading up towards that front door, up the driveway there of this Allina Health clinic. But again, awaiting official word, if you will. What, the numbers, what exactly unfolded. The idea, as you've been reporting this morning, that the suspect is in custody. What happened here this morning? I would have to imagine any sort of media briefing would be in this area. This seems to be the staging area, close proximity. They've obviously let us get a certain distance within reach of the clinic to make you think they don't believe there is an imminent threat in this specific area. This is a bustling. We're just off Highway 55, of course. in Buffalo. This is a busy strip malls behind fast food restaurants and other small businesses, a fantastic Sam's Cut and Color. So it is, these businesses are open, almost as business as usual. It's hard to kind of process what's going on here at the clinic with businesses that appear to be open. As Nate, our photographer, just kind of turns and shows you a little bit, this is on the back side, but these businesses are operating. I saw people going through the Jimmy John's drive-thru as I pulled in here. So just kind of an interesting contrast as you think about the awful events that unfolded here late this morning. And again, now on scene, I trust at some point we will see some type of media briefing over this way. Members of the other media that have descended from the Twin Cities are here with me. Probably about 45 minutes northwest of kind of what you describe as the heart of the metro here in Buffalo, being told Buffalo Police and Wright County Sheriff, sort of your initial agencies, but with the FBI, the ATF, the multi-jurisdictional arrival, we will see who ends up taking the lead in this investigation, what exactly unfolded here at this clinic area behind me.
All right, Paul, stay in place if you would. We're going to go now to a video that we have from another one of our reporters, Karen Scullin. Can we take that video?
Okay, Super 8 in Buffalo. You can see the motel right there. We've got police and ambulance there in the parking lot of the motel. Fire truck blocking the entrance to the businesses there. And then also police blocking the speedway that is right near the motel. Still trying to figure out exactly how this situation is connected to that at Allina.
All right, Karen, thank you for that. And that would go along with, we had John Catu, who is a photojournalist. His wife, they live in that area. She actually talked with a woman who was in the clinic, an older woman, who said that the man she saw shoot his gun in the building, talked about the fact that he was at a hotel and that he had bombs at the hotel. And so that would stand to reason as to why you've got law enforcement over at that hotel that Karen was just talking about there in Buffalo. But again, this woman reporting to Jen Catu that she heard about 11 shots or so in the clinic, did not hear any kind of bomb, but some shots in the clinic. And the man, she said, apparently called 911 after the shooting and reported that they would need to send ambulances. But that was, again, the person that she spoke with who was in the clinic. I believe she was actually in one of the clinician rooms at the time.
If Paul is still standing by, can we get Paul back? I have a quick question for him if he's available. Paul, can you hear me?
That's why they were fucking freaking.
Paul, can you hear me? This is Amy.
Okay, careful with the language on the air. Yep, Amy, I can hear you. Do you hear me?
Yeah,
I
do hear you, Paul. Say,
okay.
I wanted to ask you really quickly, and I know so much of this is really muddy right now, but your law enforcement sources have been talking about the possibility of bombs going off. We're also hearing from witnesses and secondhand also that people heard gunshots, people who were in the clinic heard gunshots. Can you help us sort of understand where shots may have been coming from, or if maybe they were hearing the same things, or it's getting a little bit confusing with where these noises were coming from and what they may have been?
Yeah, it sure is, and certainly you think about initial sourcing and then what we're hearing, from witnesses and on the ground. To be frank, I can't at this point connect the dots between what people heard and what was experienced up here. Initial reports of the bombs, again, there was a number given to me, led me to believe, at least from my sourcing, that's an accurate report, just in terms of the very specificity of what I had been told. But again, it's early, and in a mass casualty event like this, certainly information can get muddied. It can change as the story unfolds. What noise does a high-powered weapon make in a certain circumstance? Not saying that's what was used here or anything at all. but clearly more information is needed. Let's be upfront. Let's be honest about that. Jim Rich connecting with a firsthand witness, obviously somebody whose information probably is processing a traumatic event, but certainly a believable firsthand information. I can tell you my source had direct knowledge of what was happening here, but again, were initial reports off. We had spoken shortly after the calls, the 911 calls had come in, so we'll continue to clarify. I don't know if you've reported it, but I just was texted by sources that are now reporting a 3 p.m. news conference at the Government Center in Buffalo. My expectation would be there. That is where this information will truly be sorted out as they process what exactly took place here. Was it gunfire, explosives? The idea that bomb squads were on the way here, again, certainly leads me to believe that at least some object or objects on scene here were concerned to be explosive, ATF coming up here. Some indications that we were dealing with bombs, but again, certainly right for everybody to question what information is coming from, what the sourcing is on that information at this point. And 3 o'clock, with authorities expected to brief the media, we certainly should get some answers. But of course, for the next 2 hours, we're all going to be left to wonder what's going on inside and what happened here. And then with this nearby motel, what happened here this morning in Buffalo. We just frankly at this point cannot give you an exact clear picture of what unfolded. We're doing our best sourcing witnesses, continuing to work the perimeter here. Obviously, our proximity suggests one thing, that at least this area is considered safe. But we just don't know, and authorities calling this 3 o'clock news conference where we should get a clearer picture of exactly what happened, the number of victims we're dealing with, and how and if the suspect, it does sound, is in custody, but what their motivation was for whatever terror and violence they unfurled here this morning.
And Paul, we're also just getting word right now that the governor will be speaking at 2 o'clock this afternoon in regard to what happened there at the Allina Healthcare Clinic. So we've got that information to pass along, as well as the 3 o'clock news conference you talked about. So obviously a large magnitude.
And Paul, we showed some video just a couple of minutes ago that reporter Karen Scullin took. She was at the scene of what looked like a motel or a hotel nearby, and there were some law enforcement there. Are you hearing anything about what's happening at that hotel?
I have not. I don't know exactly how it connects to this situation, other than, social media, what Karen's reporting. It just did not. The initial sourcing that I had talked to about what was happening specifically at this clinic and the scene, I thought was contained to this area. How the motel figures in, and is that where the suspect was beforehand? Captured. I just don't know how it connects. I think right now at this point it'll have to be some information we wait on until we really get that locked down. Of course, authorities here, your lead agencies, your Wright County Sheriff, your Buffalo City Police, they are so focused on this scene. These are not large, mega metropolitan law enforcement entities. They need help. Joint backup, joint assistance has arrived here, and as they sort through the pieces and kind of come to grips with what happened, that information will become official, and we'll be able to really zero in on what exactly happened and the type of disaster we truly are dealing with on scene here.
Paul, I just want to make sure that we reiterate this for the folks in that area who have loved ones in that area. It's our understanding that even though there are a couple of different perimeters set up right now, that there is no additional threat to the community. Is that something that you can also confirm for us?
I mean, only in what I'm experiencing here on scene, but you are right. As I pulled into Buffalo, I was diverted off 55. So they certainly have. It was by Brooklyn Park Police. So you talk about joint enforcement assistance and mutual aid. Brooklyn Park was directing traffic here on the periphery of Buffalo, but they're certainly blocking certain roads in and out. But as I pointed out just a minute or two ago, businesses along Highway 55 are opening and functioning normally. I mean, I see a hairstylist on a cell phone taking a quick break, smoke break outside of Fantastic Sam's, presumably going back in to take care of customers in there. And we're talking what? I mean, a half block away is that clinic behind me. It's just kind of a strange situation here in terms of just arriving. Obviously was not here as the terror and the initial fear of what was going on, the explosions, the sound of gunfire, obviously much calmer. But certainly, there's plenty of law enforcement that if they were concerned about this general area could easily have us, ask us to leave, push us on our way, block off these parking lots. But it is wide open and businesses are continuing to operate.
All right, Paul, thank you. We just want to note here for our viewers, Randy Myers just joined us here in our coverage. And Randy, you've been watching this unfold as we have here throughout the morning, and just a horrific situation.
It's really grabbed the attention of a lot of people on my way here. I get all kinds of phone calls and texts from people wondering what's going on out there. And I'm glad we have some people out there. Paul, are you still with us? I just have, it's about, it's for a lot of people that are just tuning in, and they were getting the idea that this was happening now, and I told them to make sure they turn on the TV. Give us just like a 1-minute summary right now for those people that may just be tuning in and seeing this on their screens.
Yeah, Randy, so where I stand is, you can see the Allina Health Clinic, the center of what's taken place. I got to be honest, as we've been reporting all morning long, we don't have the very specifics locked down at this point. What we do know is there was gunfire in and around this clinic this morning. We have an eyewitness interview that Jim Rich did that we could probably re-cue, but gunfire, we were told explosive devices, bombs involved in this situation, perhaps 2 exploding, one that they were concerned about, a third one that was bringing up metro area bomb squads to deal with. Victims, the initial number I was hearing was 9, with several of those in critical condition from the get-go. A suspect in custody, as Fox 9 has been reporting throughout our coverage. How this all connects and all the dots and what exactly went down, we just do not know at this point. There is a 3 o'clock news conference that authorities here in Wright County, Buffalo, have called. That should be where we get a clearer picture. Amy just mentioned the governor perhaps providing a little bit more insight at 2 o'clock. I know he had a prior event planned for that 2 o'clock hour, so perhaps replacing one event with a chance to speak on this horrible situation. We just know it's been called a mass casualty event, a law enforcement source describing it as a disaster to me as I headed out the door and came up here. Look at this bomb squad, crime scene, special ops, heavy-duty vehicle moving in to place at that front door. I can't quite make out what it's. That's a Minneapolis?
That is the Minneapolis bomb squad.
Yeah,
yes.
that was. Yep, and that's exactly. Sorry, the sun glares, but that was what I had been told, that Minneapolis police was sending its bomb squad, and there you have it. And they have some heavy-duty equipment there that takes care of devices that they're concerned about.
Paul, briefly,
so
just for those
that indication, Rand, but I just want to obviously point out the obvious here, the fact they're moving in and just how, when I first got here, I couldn't understand necessarily why there weren't emergency vehicles closer to the facility. But now you think about this, with that bomb squad device and vehicle moving in that close, you do wonder now what is right there. Why has that area been kept kind of isolated? I know Amy, I think I heard her describing this as kind of eerily quiet.
Yeah.
You do wonder, what are they looking at right there? That is concerning. That is very concerning right there.
It is, and I think your hunches have some merit in that they're keeping people away for a reason. But the area, as you pointed out earlier, is essentially secure for the general public. And again, we want to note, as you noted and Amy noted earlier, that one person has been taken into custody. That adds to the scenario that the situation may be secure, at least where the general public is concerned. Fair?
If that's a question for me, yes, very fair, Randy. Thank you. Yes, it's, again, the proximity they're allowing us to stay, the businesses to stay open, keeping 55 at least flowing a little bit in through the heart of Buffalo here, leads me to believe that they believe, the general area is safe. I just really find it really interesting what could be happening, whether it's right in that front entrance, whether they're just looking at an object that maybe they're thinking is not a concern. But the idea that Minneapolis just pulled up its bomb squad a couple hours later in an area that is eerily quiet after a mass casualty event, at least you have to go with your gut here that something is still in there that they're concerned about.
All right, Paul, we'll let you catch your breath here for just a minute. Thank you for that information as you continue to gather more information on the ground very close to that scene. I'm wondering if we can pull up the video of our sports director, Jim Rich, who lives in the Buffalo area. Just did an interview about 30 minutes ago with a woman from the Buffalo area who was dropping her mom off at the time of this shooting. And I'm wondering if we can play that interview again.
Appointment there today. Can you walk us through what happened next?
Yeah, I pulled in. I was just getting ready to drop her off at the door, and two of the nurses came running out to my vehicle and got in. They said they heard about 11 shots within a minute, and they didn't see a shooter, but they assumed that's what it was. And then about 2 minutes later, we saw the front windows be shot out, and we left the scene.
So what did they tell you when they got in the car? You were pulling up. Were you out of the vehicle at that time, or were you just pulling up?
I was just pulling up and saw them running out, so I knew something was wrong. And they said, "Oh, we heard gunshots and we need to go." So they got in and we left.
And where did you take them?
I took them to the other clinic so they could let them know what had happened. Let them know what had happened, and anyone could be transferred there, would know what's happening.
Right. It was. How crazy was it for you? I mean, you must have thought, like, wait, this is Buffalo. This isn't something that happens here, right?
Yeah, I mean, my heart's still racing. That's where my kids go to the doctor, and I just hope they're all okay and wish I could have done more to help.
When they were in the vehicle, were they upset? Were they panicked? Were they calm? What was their mood like?
They were very scared and just wanted to get out of the place. Neither of them had their phone because they ran out so fast, so I let them call their relatives and whoever they need to get a hold of and let them know they were okay.
Well, Tiffany, it was a great reason you were there to be there.
Did you call 911 then, or how'd that all go down then?
Sure, Tom.
Yes, they came out and I said, "Did anyone call 911?" And they said they didn't have their phones. So first thing I did was call 911. It was about, I think, 10:55 before any police or anything showed up. So.
And then did you have any? Did they have any sense of how long it's been from the time you picked them up till they heard the shooting? Was it seconds, minutes?
I would say they were just coming out of the building as I was pulling up, so it had to have just happened. The shooting they heard was coming from the back of the building, and they ran out the front to me.
Knowing that you were supposed to drop your mom off, your minutes, so I mean.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we could not even be here right now as a possibility. I mean, I was going to go drop her off at the front door and then park and come get her, and within minutes there was shooting at the front window that, you know, she could have been sitting right there, and has a hard time walking, so that's very scary.
Did you see anybody? Did they see anybody? Did they have any idea of who it was or what their problem was that caused them to do this?
They did not see anyone. They just heard they said 11 shots within a minute, and to show us that it was a shooter, you know, seeing those two front windows shot out, we knew that's what it was and that we had to get out of there.
Okay, Tiffany, well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and thank you for being so helpful in getting those nurses out of the way. You have to be very proud of what you did.
Yeah, like I said, I wish I could do more. They told me I couldn't go back in, so.
Yeah, so that's a story from a first-hand witness that got involved and helped out and maybe even saved some more lives here this afternoon. Back to you guys.
All right, again, that was our Jim Rich, who lives in the Buffalo area there quickly after the reports of the shooting came in. Again, I want to give you a bird's eye view of what's happening outside the Allina Clinic there in Buffalo at this moment. The bomb squad, the Minneapolis bomb squad, Bob Unit, has arrived there. They were parked outside there just a ways, but now they have since gone into that circular drive. That piece of equipment you see in the back is generally a remote vehicle they can operate with a joystick to take inside some sort of building if there is a threat of an explosive, and that may be what they're preparing to do. We just don't know. This vehicle pulled up in front of the Allina Clinic about 5 minutes ago, and they've been prepping it ever since. We're getting tweets in from all around the state right now. This is the latest from the Minnesota State Patrol. State Patrol pilots are flying 6 boxes of blood from the Red Cross to Buffalo Hospital, so it's ready for victims of the shooting incident at the Allina Health Clinic. That tweet just coming in, and you can imagine the trauma that occurred at that clinic with the description of multiple victims in a gunshot situation, a shooting inside that clinic that occurred about 11 o'clock. So about 2 hours and 22 minutes ago is when first reports came in the state that something like this had occurred in the town of Buffalo, just west here of the Twin Cities. Again, that's that bomb squad unit piece of equipment that is often used to get that close to what could be an explosive device. They can place it inside that round sphere you see there and detonate if they have to. And that just pulled up in front of the Allina Clinic about 5 minutes ago.
And we are hearing just some incredible firsthand accounts from people who were there at the time of the shooting. We just heard from Tiffany, who Jim Rich just interviewed. She was dropping her mom off at the clinic. A couple of nurses got in her car and said, drive, just drive. And then we also, a little bit earlier, we heard from another person who we have there on the scene doing interviews for us, Jen Coutu, who's the wife of photojournalist John Coutu, who works for us. And, oh, she's back. So we do have Jen back on the phone. Jen, first of all, if you could just catch us up. We talked to you. Oh, okay, I apologize. We don't have Jen on the phone. We have Karen Scullin. And Karen, last we saw, you were outside a Super 8 motel nearby. Can you get us up to speed? Seem to be having some trouble connecting with Karen here. This is the video that she sent to us just about 20 minutes ago, and you can see the Super 8 motel there in the background. And as she was narrating this video, not a whole lot of information. Oh, is Karen there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Karen, I can hear you. This is Amy. Go ahead and tell us what you've been seeing here outside the Super 8.
Sure. So yeah, we are by the Super 8, and the entrance to the Super 8, kind of the road that leads to it, has been blocked by a fire truck. There's certainly a lot of law enforcement around. A speedway and the American Legion that are nearby have been evacuated, along with the Super 8 itself. So not a lot of people around here at this time. Law enforcement, more law enforcement units do keep arriving, along with a bomb squad. We're hearing that the suspect that was involved in the Allina incident was possibly staying here at the Super 8, which is the concern. We understand that they are concerned that there are possibly some sort of explosive that has not been confirmed, but we can see that with the bomb squad and some other units here, that's what they are looking to ultimately check out, and that's what the owner of the Speedway has been told as well. So it's kind of a standby and wait at this point. It seems like they're sort of waiting to gather all their units, gather all their people together before they go in and see what the situation is. The traffic is flowing nearby the Super 8 just fine, but again, just a couple of businesses have been evacuated, the Super 8 evacuated, while law enforcement does check things out here.
And Karen, what is the proximity of that Super 8 to the Allina Clinic? Have you been able to determine that yet?
It's not far, but no, not exactly. We stopped it. The Super 8 is kind of right when you come into town here on 55.
Right.
So we stopped there at that point. It is not far from the Allina Clinic, as Buffalo, of course, isn't that big.
Right.
But the exact distance, I'm not sure of.
Karen, I know you just arrived at the scene a short time ago. Have you been able to talk with anybody else or gather any other information from the scene, that area?
Only the owner of the Speedway I spoke to briefly. His sister called him and said that they were shutting him down. He was out ice fishing, so he ran over, packed things up from the lake, and ran over here just to make sure everything was okay. But for now, his business is closed, and along with the Tires Plus, they closed things down, and then also the Legion has closed things down. So several businesses affected at this point, but obviously everyone's safe, and that's what law enforcement is making sure of right now.
Well, it is a very active scene, and as you point out, Karen, Buffalo is not a large city. It's more of a growing town, and so everything is close by, and this has grabbed the attention of all the western suburbs all the way out to Buffalo and beyond, as people wonder what would have been the catalyst for something like this to happen in the small town of Buffalo. Back at the hospital, you can see, as we pointed out and we witnessed about 10 minutes ago, the bomb squad, Minneapolis bomb squad, by the way, showing up there in the front entrance to the Allina Clinic with the equipment it takes to defuse an active device, if there is one. We don't know if there is one, but their presence there certainly indicates that the threat would be present. Paul Bloom has been on scene now since the first reports came in. Paul, what is the sense for what elements of law enforcement? We see the bomb squad, we see other departments there. This was a mass arrival, and it came on quick. They arrived quick. It's been a large amassing of police presence out there.
Yeah, described by sources from the get-go as a mass casualty event, a disaster unfolding here in Buffalo, smaller communities you mentioned, Wright County, agencies, certainly not the state's largest. When you think about whatever happened here, the one witness describing hearing, or I think her information now and listening closely to hers might have been 11 shots in a minute, maybe secondhand information right now. But at the moment, the wind's wicked, so I apologize if my eyes are watering on TV. But all of my attention right now is completely focused on this Minneapolis bomb squad team that has arrived. You mentioned this idea of massing. We certainly saw that, and there was this. I got to this scene, and we had heard the victims, a mass casualty event, at least 9, perhaps more, 3 in critical from the start, and it was eerily quiet. It was vehicles were being kept back. This idea that what was happening inside. My gut was they had cleared out victims or something, but certainly had some concern to not. I mean, we would see a swarming. I mean, I know it's cold, but these types of events. Once they are done and scenes are rendered safe, law enforcement descends. There'd be flashing lights everywhere, tape, and we just don't see that here. So as a reporter who's gone to, tragically these scenes, you just wonder what was going on and what is their level of concern within that building right now. We had been told early on that Minneapolis was sending its bomb squad. Obviously, it takes a while. It's about a 45-minute drive, my guess is, from the city itself. To bring these crews up here, to assess the situation, to know what they're dealing with, and then finally to put in that high-tech machinery that, as you mentioned, is used to render devices safe. And if there is a concern, explode them in a contained area that's protected by the equipment that Minneapolis has. And it takes time. It's a drive. I was joining the coverage just on the phone, making calls. It takes a bit to get out here, and clearly Buffalo and Wright County needed the support. The feds have come in. I know Hennepin County Sheriff's Office was sending kind of along the lines, I think it was described to me early on, as detectives, more of the investigative side of things to help out here. There is assistance needed. Whatever happened here and the mass casualty event that has unfolded in this town of in Wright County, they need help, and help is here now, and we'll just have to kind of watch and learn and follow along with you guys and just try to process what we're seeing. But again, there are not emergency vehicles that have descended here. On the periphery, plenty of flashing lights and big vehicles and fire engines and ambulances, but that immediate scene at that front door and that parking lot of that modest healthcare clinic of Allina, you think you reported it's a family health clinic, a general practitioner type facility, that is all clear of vehicles for some reason, and now the bomb squad is doing work up there. So, we'll continue to watch it just from what I can see from our eyesight. But again, reiterating to our viewers as we stay with our coverage, it sounds like 3 o'clock is when we will really learn from the authorities who are in charge of this scene what it is that unfolded here and how we move forward in terms of the criminal justice side and the suspect and motivations and stuff. But I think right now the concern up here in this community is who was injured, how many, and were lives lost here. We certainly hope not. And at least initially, I wasn't hearing deaths. I was hearing the number being given to me as victims. So we pray, we think positive thoughts that people will walk away from what happened here today. But again, continue just to watch this bomb squad on site here at the Allina Health Clinic.
And Paul, along those lines, your sources have been describing the situation to you as mass casualties, and you reiterated this a little bit earlier. We want to make sure that our viewers understand. Sometimes you hear that and you think that means fatalities, but it's a technical term that we use, that law enforcement uses. to indicate victims, people who were injured to some extent. So we want to continue to just reiterate that. But if we could for a moment, you've given us a lot of different information here in a lot of different categories. The story has so many different layers. Can we focus on what we know about the victims so far? I know it's not much, but if you could just focus on that piece of it so we can let some of the viewers who are just joining us know what we've been hearing so far about victims.
And again, important to reiterate, the information, dated somewhat now in this fast-moving story, but the initial number was kind of right around that double-digit 9-10 number. With 3 was the initial number in critical condition, with injuries that required what you describe as emergency hospital care. But no, you are right. Mass casualty event. I do want to reiterate, when I use that term, that comes from law enforcement and does describe multiple victims. And what is conveyed with that is mutual aid likely needed, and that's what's happened. That's the perhaps the governor talking at 2 o'clock will get into sort of how public safety helps one another at moments like this, at times like this. That it's just too overwhelming for the Buffalo City Police and Wright County Sheriff to handle by themselves. They just don't have the manpower, the technology that Minneapolis brings. But yes, to reiterate your point, Amy, the numbers were right around 10 initially that I had heard, with several in what was described as critical condition. But again, that information now, 2 hours old. I mean, that was information we were hearing from the get-go, and you just don't know on the periphery, as you get deeper into that building, if more were found. I just would hate to be absolutely quoted on that until we get this information from authorities who are working that scene and have a better sense, a clearer picture now as the dust has settled on clearly what has been a horrible, awful incident here. But we just don't know just how grave and how deadly, how lethal it was. And we certainly, again, are hoping for the best, and that perhaps lives were not lost here today.
Paul, we've seen a lot of perspective from Skyfox 9 above, and for folks who may not be familiar with Buffalo, the Allina Clinic it's a relatively new clinic, by the way, kind of on the outskirts of the town. It looks like it's out in the middle of farm fields in some ways. So give people a sense for where it sits along, I believe, Highway 55, is that correct?
Yes.
Sort of where it is in relation to the city itself. A lot of people just aren't that familiar with Buffalo.
Well, Highway 55 runs right through Buffalo, and I know you describe it as on the farm fields, and probably from the aerial, it kind of gives that impression of just being an undeveloped space. But I mean, it is a short walk to the Highway 55, which is that main corridor through town. I think we've done it. Maybe we should do it one more time. I just want to show you. I mean, it's a bustling strip mall.
Yeah, we have the map up
plazas now. Okay. So anyway, it's within what I would describe as Buffalo's downtown thoroughfare corridor. Just a block off of the main thoroughfare, which would give this impression of undeveloped wooded land around it. But no, it's right along 55. And the other thing I did want to point out that has come up a couple times is that Super 8 is literally 5 minutes away, within a mile or so of where we stand. I haven't gone past. I know that's where Karen is, and there was some talk that bombs perhaps there, or some connection to the suspect over there. But do want to give you some perspective that, notwithstanding the freezing cold weather, it would be an easy walk to make, but a quick 2-3 minute drive down the road on 55 to get to that motel. But again, I don't want to lose track of this bomb squad. I don't know if the aerial shots are giving us any better perspective on what they're looking at, or how deep they've gone into the building, if it's right in that front entranceway. It's hard to sort of make out with the sun.
Essentially, Paul, we see people going in and out.
The windows.
From above, Paul, we see people going in and out. They don't seem to be in any big hurry. Several people have come in, gone out, gone to the back of the larger vehicle there, but nothing with a sense of urgency. That's basically what we've seen. We're seeing a ground shot now, for your perspective, to the front of the building there. But we've seen it above, and we've seen people come and go.
Yeah, I mean, again, you just, as a reporter on scene, and that's our ground camera, I've stepped out of the shot to focus in on that area. You're right, there does not appear, as I look around, to be much of an urgency, and we saw them amassing before they kind of pulled up and pulled into the Allina clinic there to take a look at it. But it was just the idea that machinery and mechanics have been brought in. Just, you have to think something in there has left them concerned enough to take a closer look. As you piece this all together, they're allowing us to stay here. They're allowing these businesses right here in these strip malls to remain open. So there clearly isn't a concern about, the risk over this way, but something has them intrigued enough to bring in that equipment to take a look at what they found.
All right, Paul, thank you. Stand by. We're going to check back in with our Jim Rich, who also is from the Buffalo area, very familiar with this community, obviously. And Jim, you're out at the airport, is that right?
No, I'm outside the Buffalo Hospital. Amy, this is where blood has been, we believe, brought to the hospital to treat the victims. We were here with photojournalist John Coutu when 2 state patrol cars came by, lights and sirens, and a high rate of speed drove it right to the emergency entrance. So there must be needing more supplies to help these people get along. It's very strange, very quiet. This is where we assume that the victims have been brought from the Allina clinic just across town. It's probably maybe a 3-minute car ride away. And, these nurses and doctors more than likely know these patients because they work together. So it has to be a very difficult time for these people that work here at the Buffalo Hospital, treating friends and perhaps even relatives. Earlier, I caught up with one of the witnesses to the shooting. They had pulled up. She was bringing her mom to the hospital, or rather to the Allina clinic, when 2 nurses ran out and wanted to get in their vehicle and asked them to drive them away. She obliged, and we have some sound from that earlier interview, and she could describe what happened when she pulled up to the clinic around 11 o'clock this morning. You were pulling up to the clinic. Your mom had an appointment there today. Can you walk us through what happened next?
Yeah, I pulled in. I was just getting ready to drop her off at the door, and 2 of the nurses came running out to my vehicle and got in. They said they heard about 11 shots within a minute, and they didn't see a shooter, but they assumed that's what it was. And then about 2 minutes later, we saw the front windows be shot out, and we left the scene.
So what did they tell you when they got in the car? You were pulling up. Were you out of the vehicle at that time, or were you just pulling up?
I was just pulling up and saw them running out, so I knew something was wrong. And they said, we heard gunshots and we need to go. So they got in and we left.
And where did you take them?
I took them to the other clinic so they could let them know what had happened. Let them know what had happened, and anyone could be transferred there, would know what's happening.
Right. How crazy was it for you? I mean, you must have thought, wait, this is Buffalo. This isn't something that happens here, right?
Yeah, I mean, my heart's still racing. That's where my kids go to the doctor, and I just hope they're all okay and wish I could have done more to help.
When they were in the vehicle, were they upset? Were they panicked? Were they calm? What was their mood like?
They were very scared and just wanted to get out of the place. Neither of them had their phone because they ran out so fast, so I let them call their relatives and whoever they needed to get a hold of and let them know they were okay.
Well, Tiffany, it was a great reason you were there to be there.
Did you call 911 then, or how'd that all go down then?
Sure, Tom.
Yes, they came out and I said, did anyone call 911? And they said they didn't have their phones. So first thing I did was call 911. It was about, I think, 10:55 before any police or anything showed up. So.
And then did they have any sense of how long it's been from the time you picked them up till they heard the shooting? Was it seconds, minutes?
I would say they were just coming out of the building as I was pulling up, so it had to have just happened. The shooting they heard was coming from the back of the building, and they ran out the front to me.
Knowing that you were supposed to drop your mom off, you were minutes away, I mean.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we could not even be here right now as a possibility. I mean, I was going to go drop her off at the front door and then park and come get her. And within minutes, there was shooting at the front window that, she could have been sitting right there, and has a hard time walking. So that's very scary.
Did you see anybody? Did they see anybody? Did they have any idea of who it was or what their problem was that caused them to do this?
They did not see anyone. They just heard they said 11 shots within a minute. And to show us that it was a shooter, seeing those two front windows shot out, we knew that's what it was and that we had to get out of there.
Okay, Tiffany, well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and thank you for being so helpful in getting those nurses out of the way. You have to be very proud of what you did.
Yeah, like I said, I wish I could do more. They told me I couldn't go back in, so.
Yeah, so that's a story from a first-hand witness that got involved and helped out and maybe even saved some more lives here this afternoon. Back to you guys. Yeah, she did a great job, really helped out her community and helped out her friends, and hopefully saved a couple of lives here today. We're standing by outside the Buffalo Hospital for now. We'll keep you in the loop if we hear anything or hear from any hospital spokesman. We'll break in and talk to you then. Amy, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Very close to Jim. As many of you may or may not know, Jim lives in Buffalo, in the Buffalo area, so this cuts very close to Jim. We're glad to have him out there, and he did get that witness on television. This is the, just for those folks who may be joining us, mass shooting event at Allina Clinic. Right there you can see it. It's sort of at the intersection of 55 and 35 if you're familiar with Buffalo. A fairly new clinic they built out there, an Allina Clinic. Late this morning, an individual walked into that clinic, and all we know is that shots rang out. The latest numbers are possibly 11 casualties, does not mean fatalities. 11 victims of this shooting may be the number. Again, very sketchy details at this hour about what may have happened and how many people may have been affected. But this is out in Buffalo. No motive, no understanding of what would have caused this. We do know that the suspect has been apprehended, taken into custody at the scene, we believe. Again, this happening first call came in about 11 a.m. this morning. You're seeing pictures of what the environment looked like out there in Buffalo. Those people have been taken to the Buffalo Hospital. You can see the front of the building there. Jim referenced in his interview, or the eyewitness did, those windows being shot out. You're seeing them there in the center of your screen. And that was taken from Skyfox 5 shortly after the incident occurred, as quickly as we get the chopper up and out there. And this, again, is an ongoing situation. The latest development that we have right now is that the Minneapolis bomb squad has parked their vehicle in front of that building and is clearly assessing something that has been left there, or a concern of some sort of incendiary device that may still be in that building. There was talk early on from witnesses that there may have been bombs involved. We don't know. But what we do know is that the Minneapolis bomb squad is there at this time assessing the situation, and that is essentially the most prominent thing that is happening right now outside that clinic.
Mm-hmm. And Randy, we have the information that's of course confirmed by law enforcement, which, as you say, is not a whole lot as this story continues to develop early on here. But we also have those accounts, two people who now we have interviewed. You saw Jim Rich interviewing Tiffany, who was dropping her mom off at the time of the shooting and took those nurses into her car and drove off. We also had someone on the ground for us who was interviewing a woman who was in the clinic at the time that this happened. This woman was actually in an exam room, she said, toward the back of the clinic. And this woman said that the suspect, the man, she actually says that she saw him, and she saw him walk past her room, and he went to the front of the clinic, and she says he fired off some shots. And then she says he went down the clinic hallway and fired off maybe 2 or 3 more rounds. She was actually one of the first people to call 911, but she was also close enough to this suspect, she says, that she heard him call 911 himself. And as he was talking to the dispatcher, he said, "Send an ambulance." So this is the information we have from these witnesses who were there firsthand, in addition to what law enforcement is telling us at this time.
We're also getting some responses from the community and from the state level. Representative Marion O'Neill, the Republican from Maple Lake out there representing that area, he lives in the Buffalo area. He released a statement just a couple of minutes ago, essentially, and I'm going to paraphrase here a little bit. He says, I've been in contact with Wright County Sheriff Derringer and Buffalo Police Chief Budke, offering my support for anything they may need to help our community through this unimaginable tragedy. He goes on to say, my heart breaks for the victims, their families, and our community. He also says, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting in terms of his reference to the victims. He said, Wright County Sheriff's deputies and first responders who ran toward danger instead of away from it, and the medical personnel who made sure that those injured had the best care possible. My prayers are with those who are hurt as they begin the difficult road to recovery. So he's referencing only injured there and not fatalities. That means nothing, only that he knows that there were people injured in that.
Mm-hmm. And as we continue to reset, for those of you who are just joining our coverage, we want to send it back out to the scene. And our Paul Bloom, who has been on the story since the word go here. Paul, if you could just sort of reset everything for us to give those viewers at home an opportunity to get caught up.
Yeah, you did a magnificent job just kind of bringing up everybody up to speed. In the last half hour or so, we have pointed out several times the Minneapolis bomb squad on scene. What's kind of changed in the last few minutes is now some of those flashing lights. Some law enforcement have moved closer to that building. There's more activity up in that area to suggest, again, a comfort level with the scene being secured and safe for people to come back closer to the building. I do want to say, continue to text and message, call with some sources connected to this investigation. Still very early on, but as you've mentioned, the suspect in custody. My understanding is we are starting to get some workup done on this suspect at this point and understand motivations and what might have been behind what happened here. A male suspect, older male suspect, who wreaked some type of violence on this healthcare clinic for some reason. But the investigation into the motivation continues. Obviously, still very much concerned about the number of victims. That number continues to fluctuate. You guys mentioned 11. We heard 9. I'm hearing different numbers now, and just it was a multiple casualty event, and that there are multiple victims here. We just don't know what the final numbers are. We're awaiting a 3 o'clock news conference in town over at the Government Center, where we think we'll get more information about what took place and why, and some of the fallout, the human fallout from what's happened. You could probably see a bomb. We assume a bomb-sniffing dog being led across the parking lot there in front of our eyes. I guess maybe a couple K9 units that I'm eyeballing here, and just continued law enforcement presence as this investigation really begins in earnest now. I mean, if that building was as isolated and eerily quiet as we saw it as we arrived here, now the work begins to, if they are now officially comfortable with that scene, going through there now with their K9 units, with their investigators, with their detectives, as they collect evidence from what must be a horrible scene described as a disaster from the outset to me.
All right, Paul, thanks for getting us caught up there right outside the clinic on the ground. We appreciate it.
We are seeing some what appears to be bomb-sniffing dogs. That's generally what they're used for, and you can see law enforcement doing that right now to cars that are in the parking lot. My presumption in this, and it's nothing more than that, is that they are looking possibly for what would have been the suspect's vehicle. But they are certainly taking that dog to every vehicle that they come by there, and they're opening up some. You can see that going on in the parking lot. That is the parking lot of the Allina Clinic, by the way. And they are continuing their investigation, trying to secure that area, make sure that if there were explosives or are explosives, that they locate those. I want to also bring you up to speed on what's happening. We're told at 2 o'clock, Governor Tim Walz expected to address Minnesotans on this event. You're seeing a live look right now at the podium he will be using when that happens in about 8 minutes, if they're on time. That is one of our photojournalists checking the mics and making sure that things are as they need to be for the governor when he comes up to update all of us on the latest information as it occurred. Again, this is a massive event that has affected all Minnesotans who know of it at this time, and the governor wants to make sure that he addresses it too.
All right. We want to check in now with our Rob Olson. Rob, you're at the Government Center in Buffalo. What can you tell us?
Well, this is the Government Center, the old courthouse. So we're in what is now an unused courtroom where the news conference will take place at 3 o'clock today. And this is going to be obviously a large number of various law enforcement officials. This is now local, is county, is state, and federal authorities involved in this as well. Spoke to the BCA. They have agents on their way here to be part of the investigation, and the BCA crime lab. You know, the state crime lab is a major part of processing scenes like this, and they are arriving, if they've not already, should be here shortly to assist in that. And the FBI has some special agents that are on their way here as well. Special agents, I'm told, with expertise in incendiary devices, so they can assist in that investigation that has anything to do with the explosives, any potential further explosives found here as a part of this. The FBI's role, though, in this, beyond that, remains to be seen, I'm told, depending on what comes out as far as motive here. If this is a motive for, if this is a disgruntled ex-employee, for example, if there's some motive like that, then the FBI would not be involved. If this is turns out to be connected to some sort of extremist ideology, a designated hate group, if there's that element, then they would be. So much in flux right now as we wait to learn more, and including the law enforcement agencies here also waiting to learn more to determine then what their ultimate role will be. Of course, federal involvement here with the Bureau of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms involved, but again, the FBI on their way here to be part of this investigation in terms of assisting with the expertise that they have and to determine, again, if there's a larger role for them or not, depending on how this shakes out with what we learn about why this took place. So you'll see a lot more of these agencies coming into town. They would all anticipate to be part of this news conference here coming up in this courtroom at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and hopefully by then a lot of pieces will have moved to find out a lot more, shed more light on what occurred and why it occurred and where we go from here. Back to you.
All right, Rob, thank you. We'll be joining that news conference here. I believe at 3 o'clock is the one at the emergency center, and then Governor Walz again is holding his news conference here coming up in about 5 minutes, and we'll take that live for you as well.
You were watching, and if we could go back to that video, unless they put the dogs away, but you were watching a live video of the law enforcement agency that is there checking the parking lot of the Allina Clinic with their evidence sniffing dogs. I hesitate to say bomb sniffing because those dogs are trained to do many things, and I don't know what the purpose of these are, but they are certainly canine units that are trained to sniff things out, and that's exactly what was going on there with at least 2 different animals in the parking lot. We saw a video live a short time ago. There's one of the dogs right there. We saw a video a short time ago of some trunks being opened, some cars being evaluated by those canines, as often is the case, and I think the presumption here is that they're checking every single thing they can in that parking lot for any type of evidence or any type of dangerous device that may still be present around that clinic. There was earlier reports that somehow, some way, bombs may have been involved in this or may have been set. We did see the Minneapolis bomb squad there as well, and very prominent at the entrance to that building with their massive bomb unit, their vehicle, with the remote vehicle that is pulled behind it that they can explode a device inside of. That was there as well. And this has been the next iteration of that search, the K9 units in the parking lot.
Law enforcement sources did tell our Paul Bloom, and this was very early on, that there were 3 bombs, 2 of which were detonated. And as the morning has gone on, we've heard different reports. We've heard witnesses, obviously, who were in the building, who were, one was outside the building in a car with her mom, dropping her mom off at the time, where they heard the gun shots. So we hear that from the witnesses on the ground. We've also seen, one of our producers said that she spoke with a witness who said she heard explosions. So at this point, it's still pretty muddy as to these different sounds that people were hearing, what may have been gunshots, what may have been explosions caused by bombs. There's also a secondary site here where law enforcement has built a perimeter around the Super 8 motel, which I believe they said was about a mile away.
Not far at all.
Not far at all from this site. And while we don't know the connection yet, why they're there, our Karen Scullin is there, and she did report that the bomb squads are there as well, and that the belief is that he may have been staying at the Super 8 motel. So again, that's what we know about the distinction between some of the gunshots, and you can see the windows there blown out. I believe that may or may not be. It's hard to tell to the left of the awning, but we know for certain on the right-hand side you can see where the glass is shattered out because the blinds keep moving in the wind, so you can tell that it's broken out.
And it was what was referenced by the witness that Jim Rich talked to, and that was the blown-out windows in the front of the building there, indicating and backing up what the two nurses that ran out to get in their vehicle said is that there were gunshots going off, and that's when those front windows exploded as well. Here's what we do know. The reference to a single suspect taken into custody, we really don't know much about it. Described as an older individual by those who were inside the clinic at the time of the shootings. We've heard various accounts of how many people may be involved, anywhere from 9 to 11. Again, eyewitness accounts can be very sketchy at times. We just don't know. We have not gotten any official word from any law enforcement agencies or medical agencies that would indicate how many victims there may have been, nor do we know if any are fatal. We do know that there was blood rushed from Minneapolis to the Buffalo Hospital, which is where the victims would have been taken. That would indicate the need for trauma, life-saving blood. So there certainly is reason to be concerned. We've heard from state officials, we've heard from local officials. We expect to hear from the governor here in less than a minute on this topic as well. We may get more information then. As Rob Olson pointed out, we certainly will get more information at 3 o'clock at the Wright County Government Center, where various law enforcement agencies are expected to conduct a news conference as well with updated information. But again, as we noted earlier, the governor is expected to speak at 2 o'clock on this topic to update Minnesotans on what has occurred out here in Buffalo, Minnesota, not far from the western suburbs of the Twin Cities. A lot of folks that live there work here in the Twin Cities. And this is where this has occurred.
About 40 miles northwest of the Twin Cities area. This clinic is relatively new. There's an Allina Hospital that's nearby, the Buffalo Hospital campus, and then this is a specialty clinic that, again, is nearby. It's a family medical clinic, and it covers everything from physical exams to vaccinations. There's also pediatric care here as well. And according to their website, they do have about 10 doctors and nurse practitioners that are listed as providers at this clinic. So again, we've been watching law enforcement go in and out. The perimeter has been fairly stable now since we've been watching it for the last couple of hours. Nothing much has changed in the perimeter, but we do know that a lot of support has been brought in, as Randy mentioned, from the ATF, the FBI, Hennepin County Bomb Squad is there. And it sounds like we're ready to take the governor. Is the governor up? There he goes. All right, let's listen in.
He's making his way to the microphones. Again, this is a chance for the governor to update Minnesotans on what has occurred here, at least as far as can be divulged at this point in terms of what evidence has been conducted or concluded, and the governor expected to make that information as he gets his temperature checked there to be COVID safe. Everybody masked in that environment there. The governor greeting several people in a COVID-friendly way as he makes his way toward the awaiting press conference. Again, the governor, the information that we have is probably as detailed possibly as what the governor can do as well. We expect most of the detailed information to come out at 3 o'clock. The presumption is this is an opportunity for the governor to address Minnesotans and express the same feelings that all of us do when these kind of things happen. And the tragedy, we wish the victims quick healing. The governor will address all those things when he addresses the media and the rest of Minnesotans here in just a couple minutes. And I think that's going to happen right about now.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Minnesota. Thank you for taking some time with us. We're here at Jones Harrison, and in just a few minutes, we'll talk a little bit about where we're at in the vaccine process, especially in long-term care. This is a good story. This is a place where the battle against COVID was fought on the front lines, and where they're winning. And I think it gives the opportunity to thank some of the folks involved with that. But before we do that, I wanted to address a little bit, as the news has been coming out over about the past 2 hours from the tragic situation out in Buffalo at the Allina Clinic, at the Buffalo Crossroads Clinic. At this time, what we know is there was an active shooter situation and some improvised explosive devices. It's not confirmed yet casualties or those injured in this. The way that it's been explained to me recently, as I was on with DPS and BCA, they have a suspect in custody. I was able to talk with Mayor Lackameyer out in Buffalo. And I would like to send a thank you to the Buffalo Police Department, the Wright County Sheriffs, and the mayor and her team. They were very much on it. We had, of course, a middle school in the area. She immediately talked about that they were on lockdown and provided security around the area. And at this time, it appears like it was a single individual. And again, too early to tell motives or reasons why, or to be able to discuss in a little more detail. But our thoughts and prayers, and of course our support with BCA, with Department of Public Safety, with DNR, State Patrol, and at this time we understand that there has been some early interaction with FBI and ATF because of the explosive devices involved with this. But I don't have any further information at this time on the situation, but we'll continue to update as we get more. I believe the mayor said that the incident command team and herself will be going sometime around 3 o'clock to give an update on that. So, and at the end, if we need any questions on that, I'd sure take them. But I'm here today, and I want to thank Annette Greeley, President and CEO of Jones Harrison, someone who's been involved with this for an awful long time. I believe we met as far back as last summer when we started to see working, of course, with Commissioner Malcolm on understanding at that point in time, it became very clear that COVID disproportionately was impacting long-term care facilities across the country and here in Minnesota, and ways that we could slow the transmission, way we could protect residents. And of course, back then we were talking about doing those mitigation measures until we got to the day of vaccinations. And I understand that as of Friday, the 400 residents here have been vaccinated. It's a great achievement, and I think during this time, and the fight is still going on, but the tide is definitely turning in this battle against COVID, and I think a lot of that needs to give great thanks to those frontline healthcare workers who are working in these facilities. This is where COVID did the most damage. This is where both the health, physical impact, and the mental impact that was felt by COVID because of what it was doing was felt the most. And Annette, her team, and others working with Commissioner Malcolm started to make the turn and the pivot as early as last summer in ways that we could slow that mitigation. And every day since this has started, we start our morning with a brief on COVID, and there's the section on long-term care. And there was at points in time when 39% of our long-term care facilities had active cases in them. And it was very difficult because a lot of it was coming from community spread that was being brought in. And then, of course, mitigation measures that were just painful to implement, of not having families be able to see their loved ones. It has been just a battle, and I think taking some time today to pause a little bit at a facility, as I said, that did everything they could to protect their residents, and then when the time came to vaccinate, we're on the front lines to get it done as quickly as possible. And so you're going to hear from Annette, you're going to hear from one of those nurses on the front line, and then I think the one I want to be thankful for, you're going to hear from Peter and family to talk a little bit about the residents here who've come through this thing and are now vaccinated and now getting on the other side of this. So with that, Annette, thank you on behalf of all your residents in this state, and thank you for this partnership. So, Annette Greeley.
All right, there you have the governor doing exactly what we thought he would do, and that is address what has happened out there in Buffalo, the mass shooting. Active shooter, he described it as we did this morning as well, with also including improvised explosive devices, a single individual, as he called it, and he sent out his thoughts, his prayers, and his support to the folks out in Buffalo who are now having to deal with this both physically and mentally as we move forward and learn more information about exactly what happened out there and how many people may have been affected by this particular shooter. You're seeing a aerial view there from Skyfox 9. That is the Allina Clinic. It sits right at the junction. It's called the Crossroads in Buffalo of Highway 55 and Highway 35, County Road 35 out there. Relatively new clinic, and it's a clinic of several nurses. I think there are 10 doctors that also practice out of there, primarily family health care. And the call came in shortly after 11 a.m. this morning of an active shooter entering the building, firing what was described as 9 to 11 shots. Front windows of the building shot out. Also talk of explosive devices having gone off inside that building. Since then, we have seen multiple agencies respond, including the Minneapolis Bomb Squad, the most recent to arrive there or to take over the investigation there with their unit in the front of the building, and the canine units in the parking lot that began to actively search cars in the parking lot as well. We also know that per our Karen Scullen, who is near the Super 8, not far from here, about a 5-minute walk, that there is a secured area around a hotel there, the presumption that the suspect may have stayed there and also may have been more weapons or devices in that hotel as well. So that brings you up to speed in terms of the details that we know. The suspect in custody, most important part, and we believe for the most part that the area around that clinic has been secured as far as the general public is concerned.
And this is Kelsey now stepping in for Amy, and the governor confirming that the FBI and the ATF are on scene as well because of those explosive devices that they need to investigate. Again, he said he doesn't have that much information right now, but could confirm a few things for us. We will learn more in about 50 minutes when Buffalo PD will address the public about what happened today. A quick update from the school system. Buffalo, Hanover, Montrose schools, they are canceling after school and evening activities, including community education classes and programs. Kid Care, though, will remain open until 6:30 tonight.
The next event that will occur out there in Wright County will happen at the Wright County Government Center. That's where agencies will brief the public and reporters on what details they can brief us on at 3 o'clock. Our Rob Olson is standing by there. He joined us a short time ago to kind of give us a summary of what we expect to happen, Rob, at 3 o'clock.
Well, there will be a lot of people involved in this coming at 3 o'clock. You can see some of the setup going on now. Many law enforcement agencies here, local, state, federal, all involved in this now. That will be part of this. Obviously, the main ones here, the Buffalo Police Department and the Wright County Sheriff's Department, but also on the ground of the State Patrol is assisting now at the scene in terms of traffic control and perimeter control. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension has got special agents that will be involved in this, and their crime lab here as well. Certainly the ATF involved in investigating incendiary devices, and the FBI is here as well. Now, what they have told me is that they've got special agents here that are trained in incendiary devices to offer their expertise and assist. Their role in any investigation going forward, though, depends on what we learn here and what their agents learn here about why this occurred, the motive that occurred. If it is something that gets into the FBI's domain, extremist ideology, that sort of thing, then the FBI would play a role. Short of that, though, they likely then would not, but could assist with the expertise that they do have in the areas that they do have. So again, a lot of different agencies here. Again, the prime ones being the local police department here in Buffalo and the Wright County Sheriff. But again, the BCA and the FBI and the ATF, all part of this as more resources pour in here to really go over what is a pretty large area of investigation. Certainly a larger number of victims that we're hearing about. And with the suspect in custody, we'll see again what they can tell us here coming up at 3 about what he may have told them about why this occurred and maybe how long it had been in the planning, what led up to this in recent days or weeks. So again, a lot more of this. We hope to learn more. Sometimes these news conferences can go on for a while, but they don't have a lot to say at preliminary stages, so we'll see what happens. But certainly a lot of different voices here, a lot of different sources of investigative knowledge that will be part of this, and that's what's coming up here at 3 in this former courtroom at the Government Center. Back to you.
Rob Olson from the Wright County Government Center, as he pointed out there in Buffalo. And we hope what we can learn, if nothing else, at that at that update at 3 o'clock would be the condition or where we are with victims. And that would be a very important message sent out to the community of Buffalo.
All right, and we're learning from the governor at 2 o'clock today these improvised explosive devices that are under investigation. We want to go to Paul Bloom, who's outside the clinic right now. You can see Jim Rich there, and there's a shot of the glass that's been blown out at the front of this clinic. We do have Paul Bloom on the scene to talk a little bit about what he's seeing and what he's having a chance to hear from witnesses on the scene as well. Again, Paul, we still don't know how many people are hurt, and that's the big question right now.
And those numbers are fluctuating. At one point, I was told 9 injured. That number coming down now. We're really going to have to wait till 3 o'clock to get a firm number on the number of injured and the potential number of deaths, fatalities here that might have resulted from this gunfire and these improvised explosive devices or bombs, if you will. I had been told from the outset that 2 had gone off. They were concerned about a third, which brought sort of the Minneapolis police bomb squad. I'm going to kind of step out of the shot, but if you've joined us kind of throughout our coverage, at one point in the last hour or so, that the heavy machinery and technology and equipment used to detonate improvised explosive devices or suspected IEDs has now pulled away from the front entrance of that clinic. I have been told by one law enforcement source they are looking closely. We've talked about it throughout the day, that Super 8 hotel and whether there were some devices in a hotel room over there. So I do know there is some interest in that hotel. There will continue to be interest in that hotel. Now, the suspect, as you mentioned, in custody. My understanding now, the investigative work on a potential motive now begins. Detectives doing deep dives on who was taken into custody, what his motivation was here. 3 o'clock, absolutely critical in terms of finally getting a full assessment on those injured and what we're exactly dealing with. And really, because of these IEDs and the potential explosive devices, has kind of created this odd sort of crime scene, if you will. This scene has been eerily quiet. We don't see the coming and goings that we tend to when we arrive at a mass casualty event. There clearly, has been something throughout the day that has kept law enforcement and emergency responders out of that building, investigators for the most part. But again, we do note that the Minneapolis bomb squad and their heavy machinery has pulled away from the front entrance. There are now several different marked police vehicles in the driveway. We just continue to try to make sense of this. But again, it sounds like the people who know what's going on have a clear picture of what completely unfolded between here and that motel this morning are over now at the government center where Rob Olson is, and we will get kind of our first official explanation as to what happened. The governor certainly hinting at it with an active shooter. He didn't have specific numbers. As I've said, that number to me with some sourcing I've been using and trusting today, somewhere between 5 and 10. And the question now, if any fatalities in that group. But we've heard from witnesses, multiple gunshots. Again, early reports were 2 detonated devices. We'll again get confirmation of that, but certainly a concern here about IEDs, where they were planted, where they may have been kept, and where they would have exploded if they had. So a very much fluid situation here. Again, continuing to just observe this, quiet building that just does not feel like it's turned into that full investigative crime scene at this point for some reason, and perhaps we'll get an explanation as to why that is at the top of this hour.
You're right, Paul. Just three hours ago, this was such an active crime scene, and to see it like this right now is kind of eerie as we try to figure out all the unknowns. Thank you for being outside the Allina Crossroads Clinic right now. We'll go back to you in just a little bit.
You mentioned that time frame, some 3 hours and 16 minutes ago when the first reports came in. Our Jim Rich lives in the Buffalo area. That's considered his hometown right now. And he was able to get to the Allina Clinic very quickly. Jim was also able to interview one of the eyewitnesses there. Let's go to Jim Rich now. Jim, this was a traumatic event for the people who were there witnessing it.
Oh, no doubt about it, Randy. I mean, you've been out here. You know people that live in this community. A lot of Fox 9 employees work out here and live in this area. And this doesn't happen. I mean, this is a community where you stand up for your neighbor. You help them out. guy needs something moved, you're the first guy there. That's what this town has been built on. That's why it's been such a great place for families to live over the years. And new people move in, they welcome them, they take care of them, and they try to help them out. But this is something that certainly has never happened in this community, and hopefully never happens again. We're standing by outside here, the Buffalo Hospital. This is where the victims have been brought. About an hour ago, 2 state troopers came through here, we presume bringing blood for the victims. Lights and sirens were on, and then we just noticed something I want to show you here. About 10 minutes ago, police have now secured this area behind me and developing here. We'll have to see what they're doing. This is a residential neighborhood, and from what we can tell, police are setting up a perimeter. They're not letting any people in unless they know who they are or if they have a purpose to be in that neighborhood. But this is something that has just popped up here in the last 10 minutes. Earlier today, I was able to speak with a witness that was there at the time, dropping off her mom at the clinic when the shootings occurred, and she described what happened when 2 nurses came out to her car and wanted a ride to escape the scene. You were pulling up to the clinic. Your mom had an appointment there today. Can you walk us through what happened next?
Yeah, I pulled in. I was just getting ready to drop her off at the door, and 2 of the nurses came running out to my vehicle and got in. They said they heard about 11 shots within a minute, and they didn't see a shooter, but they assumed that's what it was. And then about 2 minutes later, we saw the front windows be shot out, and we left the scene.
So what did they tell you when they got in the car? You were pulling up. Were you out of the vehicle at that time, or were you just pulling up?
I was just pulling up and saw them running out, so I knew something was wrong. And they said, "Oh, we heard gunshots and we need to go." So they got in and we left.
And where did you take them?
I took them to the other clinic so they could let them know what had happened. Let them know what had happened, and anyone could be transferred there, would know what's happening.
Right. It was. How crazy was it for you? I mean, you must have thought, like, wait, this is Buffalo. This isn't something that happens here, right?
Yeah, I mean, my heart's still racing. That's where my kids go to the doctor, and I just hope they're all okay and wish I could have done more to help.
When they were in the vehicle, were they upset? Were they panicked? Were they calm? What was their mood like?
They were very scared and just wanted to get out of the place. Neither of them had their phone because they ran out so fast, so I let them call their relatives and whoever they needed to get a hold of and let them know they were okay.
Well, Tiffany, it was a great reason you were there to be there.
Did you call 911 then, or how'd that all go down there?
Sure, Tom.
Yes, they came out and I said, "Did anyone call 911?" And they said they didn't have their phones. So first thing I did was call 911. It was about, I think, 10:55 before any police or anything showed up. So.
And then did they have any sense of how long it's been from the time you picked them up till they heard the shooting? Was it seconds, minutes?
I would say they were just coming out of the building as I was pulling up, so it had to have just happened. The shooting they heard was coming from the back of the building, and they ran out the front to me.
Knowing that you were supposed to drop your mom off, you were minutes away, I mean.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we could not even be here right now as a possibility. I mean, I was going to go drop her off at the front door and then park and come get her, and within minutes there was shooting at the front window that, you know, she could have been sitting right there, and has a hard time walking, so that's very scary.
Did you see anybody? Did they see anybody? Did they have any idea of who it was or what their problem was that caused them to do this?
They did not see anyone. They just heard they said 11 shots within a minute, and to show us that it was a shooter, you know, seeing those 2 front windows shot out, we knew that's what it was and that we had to get out of there.
Okay, Tiffany, well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and thank you for being so helpful. Okay, Randy, Kelsey, what we're looking at now is ATF agents have moved into this neighborhood to secure this scene. Not sure why they're here, but we just want to let you know that they've moved in here within the last 15 minutes. Perhaps we'll know more at the 3 o'clock press briefing, but they're
Jim,
still working the situation and trying to resolve this. Randy?
let me ask you, Jim, because you're at the hospital now, not at the clinic, and these showed up near the hospital,
Correct.
which is a little bit confusing, but give people a sense for how far from the Allina Clinic the hospital is, and now we're seeing this scene set up, which, as you point out, appears to be a perimeter being set up in a neighborhood nowhere near the Allina Clinic.
Right. I mean, I could venture a guess if you wanted me to, but
No guessing.
You know, I don't know how far I should go with what we have, but all I know is they just arrived here within 15 minutes. It doesn't seem to have to do with anything with this hospital. It doesn't seem to do with anything of the victims. It seems like it has to be something I would assume, and again, I am assuming here, this has to do with the suspect. So perhaps they have located a residence or something along those lines. But again, that is all just speculation and observation.
All right, Jim, Rich, thank you. Thanks for being on that scene. Thank you for the interview, and we're sorry that this happened in your community.
And we do know the ATF is on scene assessing the bomb threat situation. So the ATF and the FBI are there near the hospital. Again, as Jim speculated there, it could have something to do with the suspect and perhaps where he lives. We'll wait to find out more information. Also, Jim's outside that Buffalo hospital, and he said he saw the pilots, the State Patrol pilots coming in. They had said earlier they were flying in 6 boxes from the Red Cross to Buffalo Hospital for the victims. We want to go to Karen Scullin, who's been at another crime scene, potential crime scene outside the Super 8, where they are also assessing a bomb threat situation. So, Karen, do we have you on the phone? Can you hear us and maybe give us an update from there?
Sure. Actually, I'm not at the Super 8. I've moved from that location, which is still very active. Certainly a lot of law enforcement still on scene there, along with a bomb squad, as you mentioned. It appears, obviously, they are checking to see if there are any bombs at that location. Now we've moved just a few miles away from there to a neighborhood that we believe is connected, possibly where the suspect in this case is living. We don't want to give the exact location, as we don't have a lot of information confirmed at this point. I can tell you the road is blocked in the area. Traffic is barely moving through, but police are very much controlling who's coming in and out of this area here. Right now, it looks like slowly maybe some law enforcement gathering and moving into this area here. Again, though, hard to tell exactly how this is connected. We are certainly seeing several different situations or scenes throughout the small city of Buffalo here. Jim, obviously at the hospital. I'm here at the neighborhood. We have the Super 8 situation, and then the Allina Clinic, of course. So right now, I'm just kind of monitoring the situation. We're kind of watching and waiting to see what happens, if anything, here, and trying to piece together exactly how this might be connected to the entire situation. I think the situation is so fluid and so many things are developing minute to minute, really, and we're just kind of gathering information and kind of watching and waiting to get things confirmed at this point. But again, we are at a situation, a neighborhood that we believe is connected. There are police here blocking traffic, but that is it at this point. If anything changes or develops, we'll certainly keep you updated on that.
Yeah, Karen, let us know as soon as you have any new information. We'll come right back to you in that area where we know ATF and law enforcement are gathering potentially something that's connected to this one individual who's been taken into custody. Karen Scullin, thank you from Buffalo.
As we get closer to the bottom of the hour here, a couple things I want to update you on, knowing that the Wright County Government Center will hold at that site will hold a press conference. You're seeing video right now from Skyfox 9, the front windows of the Allina Clinic blown out. So I wanted to let you know what you're seeing there as I tell you kind of where we're going with this story. A 3 o'clock press conference to update us on which agencies are involved and what we know in terms of what they can release for details. I think the primary point of that would be an update on the victims. How many are there? What's the condition of those victims? Because we are hearing different numbers and none of it is confirmed at this point. There are 4 scenes out there in Buffalo that now have law enforcement or other agencies at right now. That's one of them, the Allina Clinic there, where the assault, active shooter, and the shooting took place, also armed with improvised explosive devices. That first call came in about 11 a.m. Another scene is near the Super 8 Hotel, not far from there. That was quickly cordoned off with other law enforcement agencies, presumably some connection to the suspect. We also have the Buffalo Hospital, which is where the victims were taken, where you just heard from Jim Rich, as we see another one of those heavy equipment vehicles from law enforcement moving through Buffalo there as they check out all of those scenes. The fourth scene, which is just developing now, and where you just heard from Karen Scullin, is a neighborhood, and this neighborhood appears not far from the Buffalo Hospital, coincidentally, also being cordoned off at this point by law enforcement as well. So there are various places in the city of Buffalo where law enforcement and other agencies are conducting an investigation right now in a situation that began to unfold around 11 a.m. this morning with an active shooter inside the Allina Clinic in Buffalo, where several victims were injured, and we do not know at this point what the condition of those victims are. The governor, Tim Walz, addressed Minnesotans a short time ago, about a half hour ago. He was at a long-term care facility in Minneapolis talking about COVID efforts and vaccination efforts in the Twin Cities. But he did say that right now their thoughts, their prayers are with the folks of Buffalo. Let's listen into what the governor had to say.
At this time, what we know is there was an active shooter situation and some improvised explosive devices. It's not confirmed yet casualties or those injured in this. The way it has been explained to me recently, as I was on with DPS and BCA, they have a suspect in custody. I was able to talk with Mayor Lackameyer out in Buffalo. And I would like to send a thank you to the Buffalo Police Department, the Wright County Sheriffs, and the mayor and her team. They were very much on it. We had, of course, a middle school in the area. She immediately talked about that they were on lockdown and provided security around the area. And at this time, it appears like it was a single individual. And again, too early to tell motives or reasons why, or to be able to discuss in a little more detail. But our thoughts and prayers, and of course our support with BCA, with Department of Public Safety, with DNR, State Patrol, and at this time we understand that there has been some early interaction with FBI and ATF because of the explosive devices involved with this. But I don't have any further information at this time on the situation, but we'll continue to update as we get more.
Governor Walz about a half hour ago.
And we're hearing from Senator Amy Klobuchar as well. She posted this tweet just a short time ago. Tragic shooting at a Buffalo, Minnesota health clinic today, not far from where I grew up. Several critically injured. So sad for all those there at the clinic and those injured, and praying for their recovery. Thanks to those saving lives right now. Gun violence must stop. And Rob Olson is at the Government Center in Buffalo right now, where a 3 o'clock news conference is set to take place, where we will learn, hopefully, some more information from local officials. And so, Rob, we know that a single individual has been taken into custody, but we're not hearing anything yet about a motive.
No, and it's hard to say at this point, a half hour out from this news conference here at the Wright County Government Center, if they'll be able to speak to that in any detail or not, whether the investigation is at a point where they feel comfortable sharing some of those details with us. If it's moving quickly enough, they can. Obviously, it's kind of hard to predict at this point. We do know that set to speak here in a half hour is the Buffalo Police Chief, the Wright County Sheriff, and the president of the hospital here in Buffalo. Those are the three that are slated to address this news conference with hopefully with some more details on what occurred and how many were injured, how they're being treated. Hopefully some good news potentially on some prognosis, obviously fearing the worst at this point. And then, of course, from the president of the hospital here to talk about what occurred inside and the reaction. Whether there'll be anybody else that steps up to the microphone remains to be seen. Of course, a lot of agencies here. I do know that the FBI is here in the building. They came in to be part of this news conference, but whether they actually will address folks, it remains to be seen. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension on the ground here as well, along with the ATF. So a lot of different agencies here, but at this point, slated to speak here again are the Buffalo Police, Wright County Sheriff, and the president of the Buffalo Hospital. So hopefully here in a half an hour we can shed a little bit more light on what happened here in its totality and any insight as to why this may have occurred, what led to this. It's just so unthinkable that something like this would happen. So to shed any sort of light on the mindset leading into this we'll see if that could occur. So we're here. It's getting busier and busier as more people pour in. This will be crowded here by 3 o'clock, and we will, of course, get you all the latest as it comes in. Back to you.
Sure, Rob. The Wright County Sheriff, Buffalo Police, and also the president of the hospital set to address the public here at 3 o'clock. Hopefully we'll understand maybe a bigger picture view of all of this, with all of those explosive devices and scenes being investigated for potential bomb threats. There are a lot of questions about the bigger threat involved in this, even though we know a single individual has been taken into custody. And these are some still pictures outside the scene there. And again, the Allina Crossroads Clinic, an active crime scene with windows blown out. Quiet right now because that individual has been taken into custody, but there are several other active locations being investigated, including a Super 8, and then also a line of cars, emergency vehicles, forming a perimeter around a residential neighborhood that is also near the Buffalo Hospital.
Let's get back to where it all began. Paul Bloom has been on the scene there since the first reports came in, and we got him out there as fast as we could. Paul has been able to gather as much details from the scene as possible. Paul, it's the bottom of the hour here. We know that we're going to get some information updated at 3 o'clock, but bring our viewers up to speed on what you saw when you arrived, and at least the details as we know them at this hour, which is 2:33.
Yeah, Randy, Kelsey, we've talked about just the scene and how quiet the clinic is behind me, and obviously continues to remain so. At one point, the Minneapolis bomb squad had its heavy machinery and equipment up there. See a couple folks now on the jog. You know, you're looking for any sort of sign of why people might be running. Obviously concerning on the surface. Perhaps just cold and running to their vehicles. It's hard to assess that, but I will point out one thing that has changed here at the scene in the last few minutes. A BCA crime scene team is here. I know Rob's been talking about their potential involvement here. Obviously, perhaps the most thorough of investigative agencies in the state. They are on scene. The Minneapolis bomb squad, I've noticed their big trailer has left the scene, perhaps moving to one of these other locations. Suspect residence, that motel, I'm told, is a concern. So we just don't know. It's hard to process what we're seeing here until we hear from authorities with their official assessment at 3 o'clock. That the victims of the gunfire has fluctuated somewhere between 5 and 10 for me today. Unclear if anyone was killed. Perhaps get some more specific information again at the top of the hour. All we can do is assess what we see, talk to witnesses who heard the gunfire, who ran from that scene, who protected others. Assuming, it was a while till we actually physically arrived here. They got the victims out, perhaps evacuated that building, and it just otherwise, other than seeing some small groups coming and going in that bomb squad that was here, now about an hour ago, just no movement whatsoever, nothing going on. I wish I could provide more, commentary of how to assess it. It is a building with 2 blown out windows. It is the scene of what we understand is horrible gun violence today. Perhaps an explosive device going off within the perimeter there. We don't know earlier today until we get confirmation, but it just stands alone, and we just assume the investigation is ongoing. Perhaps right now the manpower is concerned about these other locations for some reasons, and they'll come back here. I just don't know what to make of why this is a ghost building at this point. It's hard to connect the dots on that, but clearly crews are handling this building delicately. And we'll just have to assess and then be able to put the pieces together at 3 o'clock and understand what happened, why this building has sort of been left for now, and attention has shifted to other parts of Buffalo.
Well, just stand by for a second. I want to bring our viewers up to speed in terms of where you are. If we can bring up a map that shows our non-Buffalo viewers exactly the area we're talking about. Again, this is a active shooter involved. About 11 a.m. this morning at that Allina clinic that Paul is standing outside, and there it's called the Crossroads Clinic because it's right there at County Road 35 and Highway 55 there. And it sits kind of outside of sort of the perimeter of town there, but in an area, a growing area, so it's not far from anything, frankly. and the hospital not far from there as well, which is where the victims were taken to. This unfolded about 11 o'clock. If we can maybe show our viewers some of the on-scene video that we were able to gather 2.5 hours ago when this first broke. Obviously, as you can imagine, there was a massive response from law enforcement, but as Paul pointed out throughout these last couple hours, they stayed away from the clinic, and now we can surmise they did that because of the threat of improvised explosive devices inside that building, in addition to the gunfire that went off. And sure enough, approximately an hour and a half after the event occurred, the Minneapolis bomb squad, massive main unit, arrived there in the front of the building with one of those pieces of equipment that can operate remotely to get any type of explosive device inside what is a sphere on the back of that and detonate if you have to. That was there for approximately an hour and a half and has recently left the front. But you can see what Paul was referring to there, the blown out glass on both sides of that front awning area there where patients and staff come and go. And that's where an eyewitness that Jim Rich was able to talk to said she was in the process of dropping her mother off when two nurses ran from those front doors and in a frantic way asked if they could get in their car and be taken away because there was a shooter inside that building. And they described what they thought were 9 or so shots in the back of the building where they were not. Other witnesses have described the suspect as an older individual, a single male individual, but that's really about all we have on the suspect. Since that time, as we move in on this map to give, again, our viewers who may not be that familiar with Buffalo an idea of what we're talking about. Again, Buffalo, not a big city, kind of a small bedroom community that where a lot of folks do work here in the Twin Cities and live out there. But that scene then very quickly became one of law enforcement getting the victims to there's the unit I was talking about, the Minneapolis Bomb Squad unit that arrived there an hour and a half or so after the original shooting occurred. They have since left, and as Paul pointed out, there are now 3 other scenes in the city of Buffalo, one at a Best Western where we had our Karen Scullin. That seems to have been secured, presumption that maybe some connection to the suspect. The hospital where the victims were taken, another scene, and then most recently, within the last half hour, a scene involving a neighborhood not far from, not this clinic, but the hospital.
All right, we want to go back out to Paul and just talk a little bit about some of the answers that we still need as we approach this 3 o'clock press conference. So, Paul, we don't know any kind of motive. We don't know what the threat may still be out there and why we have the ATF in other parts of the city of Buffalo right now. And most importantly, we just don't know how many people are hurt.
Correct. It looked like Wright County just posted a tweet a minute ago shared by the newsroom out with me. I hadn't seen it, but again, just kind of providing a little bit of the loose framework, multiple people taken to the hospital, the exact time of that 911 call, which we knew was just before 11 o'clock. Active shooter situation, no specifics on the numbers, again pointing us to a 3 o'clock news conference where we should learn more. Again, we've kind of shown you several times now just sort of the building remains evacuated. They evacuated the building, several people taken to the hospital after this gunfire here today. I can tell you at least a little bit on the suspect front. In custody, investigators doing a deep dive on the suspect. My understanding, preliminary information, someone familiar to local law enforcement, so they are beginning to dig on possible motives here. It does sound like he is local, which would explain scenes around this community where more attention is being paid given the alleged actions that occurred here. One can assume if it was an active situation, the suspect that was taken into custody was sort of an obvious suspect to law enforcement arriving. So investigators now doing a deep dive on motivation, what he was thinking, what he was doing, what he was capable of doing before perhaps being captured, which is why bomb squads and other ATF-type teams might have sprawled across Buffalo to assess the potential danger that exists even with him in custody. So I think that is the kind of stuff that is going on right now. Again, hoping to learn a lot more information at 3 o'clock in terms of the numbers. We do know from emergency scanner traffic initially and some sourcing somewhere between 5 and 10 victims. 3 were reported to be critical from the outset. Right now, deep investigative work being done and then getting eyeballs and manpower on these locations that the suspect has been, perhaps his residence, perhaps a motel where he may have stayed or visited recently. But there's something that has turned the attention of sort of your bomb squads that are here that have moved on, the ATF that our fellow crews have seen around Buffalo, moving away from this location. This location has been evacuated. This was the scene of the violence, the bloodshed. Clearly, law enforcement feels like everybody is out of there. It has been kind of this eerie ghost-like building now for several hours, save for that half hour or so time frame mid-afternoon when the Minneapolis bomb squad pulled up with its heavy-duty detonation equipment. We didn't hear any subsequent IEDs going off, or any didn't appear from our eyesight that they did anything at that front door, but certainly were eyeballing the situation and taking a look at what they had within that Allina clinic. But again, I think 3 o'clock will be critical, and then that will help connect these dots of what took place today across the city in Wright County.
All right, Paul. And also, 2 schools were evacuated and students sent to Buffalo High School. Those schools were Tatanka Elementary and also Pride Transitions. And all after-school activities have now been canceled for the school district as well. The Wright County Sheriff's Office has issued a statement, and while there isn't a lot of new information, and we do expect to hear from them in about 15 minutes at 3 o'clock, they reiterated that they received this call at 10:54 this morning, and then they were dispatched to help Buffalo police. The suspect was arrested, and at this point, we don't think they're looking for anybody else, but the location was evacuated. Several people transported to area hospitals. We know that victims were taken to Buffalo Hospital and North Memorial as well in Minneapolis. The public is being asked to stay out of this area, of course, and law enforcement agencies and emergency vehicles remain in this area. We know that we have crime scenes at the Super 8 Hotel and also near a residential area near Buffalo Hospital. So schools were put on a temporary lockdown as a precautionary measure. So at 3 o'clock, we expect to hear from the Wright County Sheriff's Office, Buffalo Police, and the president of Buffalo Hospital.
What you're seeing right now is the aerial shot there of that Hennepin County bomb squad as they arrived at the scene after the shooting occurred, clearly to evaluate and assess if any of those devices, explosive devices that apparently were there or left at the scene or planted at the scene, could be removed, needed to be removed, or needed to be detonated. And they came in and out of the building several times. We watched them while they were there. Never saw anything that appeared to be placed inside that sphere you see, which is where they would detonate a device if they needed to. From what we could tell, that did not happen, although we didn't see it at all times. Again, that's a remote-controlled vehicle they use many times if they have to go into a building, near a building, to detonate something. And we did get reports, and the governor did also say this when he addressed the public at about 2 o'clock, that there were some improvised explosive devices found at the scene, which is why the FBI has been called in on this one, which is normal protocol when any type of explosive devices are found or used in a situation like what we saw here today. And that's what I was describing earlier. And again, this is shot earlier. As Paul points out, that scene has been the clinic scene has been evacuated. No one in that building at this hour, as far as we know. And the focus of this investigation now moves to other parts of the city of Buffalo. We do know that the Best Western was looked at, and a perimeter was set up there, as we pointed out earlier. And the most recent area that is coming under scrutiny in the city of Buffalo is a neighborhood not far from the Buffalo Hospital, where another perimeter has been set up, presumably some connection to the suspect. And those are essentially the latest details, the concrete details that we have. Again, the next phase of this investigation, the next phase really of details being released should happen at 3 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this was a busy place at 11 o'clock this morning. It's a small clinic, but a busy place where people were in exam rooms at the time when they heard gunfire and then also those explosions. So you think about just the panic that probably set in as people were trying to figure out what was happening and where it was coming from, how could they get to safety, call 911. We had Jim Rich interviewing a witness who had pulled up in the parking lot, and she was taking her mom there, and some nurses ran outside and said, just go, just drive, and tried to explain what was going on. They had left their cell phones behind, so this woman let them borrow her cell phone so that they could call loved ones to let them know that they were okay. But just pure panic at 11 o'clock this morning here at the Allina Crossroads Clinic as people heard gunfire and those explosions going off. We have Rob Olson, who's at the Wright County Government Center, setting up for this news conference that will take place in about 13 minutes. And so, Rob, I know you don't have any additional details, but we know the ATF and the FBI are there, Minneapolis bomb squad. There are a lot of agencies that are coming in to help out with this.
Well, yeah, certainly this is an all-hands-on-deck scenario for law enforcement locally and across the state, and of course the federal authorities. I know that even the Minneapolis police spokesperson, John Elder, is here. He just was dispatched to just help with communications coordination, not in any really official capacity there. The Minneapolis bomb squad, though, is also assisting, but he was sent out to do whatever help that he can from a communication standpoint. I know that I've seen the spokesperson for the FBI is here, and for the Department of Public Safety, the BCA certainly playing a role here with agents here, and the State Crime Lab. We've got, again, FBI agents, a handful of them, don't have an exact number, that are here assisting in the investigation and assisting, obviously, with investigating the explosive devices here. They have a knowledge of those, and then determining if there's a role going forward for the FBI, depending on motive here, plays a big role in whether they will continue to do that. Scheduled to speak here, though, at this news conference for sure is the police chief of Buffalo, the sheriff of Wright County, and the president of the Buffalo Hospital. Those are the three that are scheduled to address the media. But again, many of these other agencies on hand as well to listen in, to assist, to inform as best they can. Certainly, again, so many different elements here that have shown up to take part in this, because it's a pretty wide-ranging investigation here into what occurred. Again, now just more than 10, 12 minutes away from this news conference, so getting very soon, hopefully, to shed a little bit more light on all of this. Back to you.
Yeah, the folks at Buffalo hope that the president of the hospital will certainly update. As Jim Rich pointed out, everybody knows each other for the most part in Buffalo, and certainly the connection between the Allina Clinic and that hospital, that folks there presumably would have known the people that were injured or otherwise in this active shooter situation that occurred there. So I think if some information can be given about what the condition of those victims are, what the real number of those victims are, that's really valuable. We know that an investigation like this will take quite some time, so the details of that may not come, but if we can get some information on where we are with those victims, I think the folks at Buffalo would really appreciate that.
Number one, I think we're just all incredibly worried about how those victims are doing.
Yeah, so many people are, so many people have health on their minds right now with the pandemic and everything. It's just such a shame that something like this can occur anywhere, let alone a health clinic like this in what by most standards would still be considered a small town in Minnesota.
Right, and where employees have been working nonstop for the last 10 months amid this pandemic and this crisis with COVID to help people. That's what they do every day when they go to work. They go to work to help people.
We are getting responses from people all over Minnesota, and elected officials as well as others, but I know that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar did tweet out a short time ago, "I'm devastated by the news of this mass shooting and bombing in Wright County, Minnesota. My thoughts are with all the victims and their families right now," and attached to that a picture of the scene, a similar picture to what we've shown you as law enforcement and medical crews amassed there. You can see the clinic in the background of that picture that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar had tweeted out just a short time ago.
Yeah, all hands on deck situation with law enforcement. Law enforcement have gathered from across the state. The State Patrol flew in boxes of blood 4 victims who were taken to Buffalo Hospital as well today. And so everybody is doing what they can to try to help this situation. And again, the bigger picture we may not know yet because there were explosive devices involved in this. And we know the ATF and the FBI are working to see if there are more potential threats out there, just what the scope of all of this is, because we don't really know a lot about the suspect. A single individual who was taken into custody who may have also called 911 after this shooting. We know that at 11 o'clock today, that clinic that you see right there, the Allina Crossroads Clinic, gunfire was heard, and then explosions as well. And you can see the windows are broken. 2 of those windows are broken at that clinic. And then at 2 o'clock, the governor updated us and could not confirm the number of people hurt in all of this, but we know there are multiple people who were taken to hospitals, including Buffalo Hospital, the closest, and North Memorial. And 1 person, again, taken into custody, but we don't know yet if more people could potentially be involved or if this was just the act of 1 person, and we don't know why. We also know that Buffalo is considered one of those bedroom communities, so a lot of folks who live there work in the Twin Cities. The district, the Buffalo, Hanover, Montrose, out there, the school district, it includes those areas, sent out a note to parents, families, and staff about an hour ago, and it reads in part, today there was an emergency situation at the Allina Crossroads that prompted schools in the Buffalo area there to be in lockdown. And at the direction of the Buffalo Police Department, we evacuated students from the 2 closest schools, which happen to be Tatanka Elementary STEM School and Pride Transitions. Those kids went to Buffalo High School, by the way, and that's probably where they are now, unless parents have responded to pick them up, although I don't know that that clearance has been given yet. All other schools will remain today at their regularly scheduled time. All Kid Care sites will be open until 6:30. Tatanka Kid Care students will remain at Buffalo High School until picked up by parents. The district, this is the district's words, acted quickly with the help of the Buffalo Police Department and Wright County Sheriff's Department to make sure that our students and staff are safe and secure. Our thoughts go out to those who are directly involved or indirectly involved with this situation. They're going to give out more information as it becomes necessary. That, for our purpose, is to give anybody who might just be picking this up or whose parents are those parents that work in the Twin Cities wondering where their kids are. That's where they are. Buffalo High School is where any of those kids at those 2 schools close to this area were taken when this occurred. Right. And after school activities, any programs for the evening, they have been canceled for the entire district in light of what happened here today at this Allina Health Clinic. Again, we're about 5 minutes away from the start of this news conference where we may learn some more information, but we have Rob Olson, who's at the Wright County Government Center. We have Paul Bloom, who's at the scene at the Allina Crossroads Clinic. We have Karen Scullin, who has been at the Super 8, which was the crime scene where they were checking for the potential of explosive devices today. And then she has moved to a residential area where the ATF and other law enforcement investigators have surrounded an area, created a perimeter, and they're not letting people in. Again, we don't know what they're potentially investigating there, but we know if the ATF is involved, it has something to do with the suspect or the potential for more explosive devices.
The suspect, by the way, has been taken into custody, so at least that part of this story is being verified, that the individual who entered the Allina Clinic was taken into custody. In fact, one of the witnesses there described it as an older gentleman with gray hair. Also said that they were close enough to hear the suspect dial 911 saying send ambulances to that scene, which is also an interesting fact. Not verified yet, by the way, by law enforcement, but that is what's coming from eyewitnesses on the scene who were inside the clinic when this occurred.
You know, and Buffalo is such a tight-knit community that anybody who lives in Buffalo is likely sending out a message, and I've seen these today, just letting everybody know that they're okay, because everybody sort of knows everybody there. And this is very personal. We have employees like Jim, Rich, and photojournalist John Catu who live in this community, and it's very personal for them. And I know they're worried right now that they know somebody who was inside that clinic earlier today.
Again, the next thing that we will see here on Fox 9 will be that 3 p.m. Press conference at the Wright County Government Center. At the time, we will hear from 2 different law enforcement agencies, Wright County Sheriff's Department, Buffalo City Police Department. We also expect to hear from the president of the Buffalo Hospital, presumably to update us on victims that were taken there. We do know that that's where the shooting victims did go. We also know that the American Red Cross, with the help of the Minnesota State Patrol, sent several boxes of blood to that hospital to aid in the trauma care of those victims. We know that at least, but we do know that they will be releasing more information in terms of what occurred. Hopefully we'll get more detailed information about the suspect, and then certainly more information about the victims and where their conditions stand at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Just trying to wrap your head around this, it's very difficult. You know, we've been living in a state of uncertainty for the last 10 months, and it's been a very difficult year. And then to have something like this happen at 11 o'clock in the morning at a healthcare clinic, it's just very difficult to understand why anything like this would happen. And I know in Buffalo, they're having a very difficult time understanding how this could especially happen there.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and without assuming too much, I do know that the folks that live out there often, because I know several people who live out there, who often say, we're glad we live in Buffalo for various reasons. So you just hate to see this happen anywhere, but the profound effects it can have on a smaller community, it's just heartrending when this happens. You're seeing images here that were taken throughout the morning as this investigation unfolded. This is near the Super 8, which we talked about, where Karen Scullin had been positioned earlier this morning. This is the scene outside the healthcare clinic, the Allina Clinic, when the K-9 units were brought in, and they were going through several vehicles looking for any types of evidence, presumably also looking for any additional explosive devices that may still be present. There were two different dogs doing this. You can see in the left-hand side of your screen there, the one doing their job there. This went on for about 45 minutes, and then this concluded as part of the investigation right on site there at the Allina Clinic.
Yeah, and that's a big concern. Is there another shoe that's going to drop with this potential suspect? Was this premeditated? Was there a plan to do even more harm? And so getting around this suspect's residence or any other place that he may have had an issue with, they have to be very careful. And that's why you see all of this equipment coming in, and why things may tend to look like they're moving a little bit slow, because checking a site out like the clinic for more potential explosives, it takes a long time. It is a careful, it's a tedious process. So you think about that happening at multiple scenes right now. This is going to take days to put together.
Yeah, it really will. We want to make sure that we get you to the Wright County Government Center right up at 3 o'clock, which is about 4 seconds from now. We want to make sure that our viewers can get every bit of information that's going to occur here as the Wright County Sheriff's Department, the Buffalo City Police, and the president of the hospital speak and address those in attendance. Let's listen in.
My name is Pat Budke, B-U-D-K-E, and I am the police chief for the City of Buffalo Police Department. Our hearts break today as a community at 10:54 a.m. We received a 911 call from a clinic in in the 700 block of Crossroads Campus Drive. The report was that shots had been fired. Officers responded. Those officers immediately were given information that the shooter that there were several people injured within the clinic. Officers responding located multiple victims, and also the shooter, a 67-year-old male who was taken into custody. And those officers then immediately began to render aid to the injured. There is no information at this point that leads us to believe that there is any nexus with any type of domestic terrorism. We are very familiar with the suspect, and I would just like to say I'm very proud of the men and women of law enforcement that responded to assist with this incident, to put themselves in harm's way. I want to thank the multiple agencies. Representatives are here with us. Everyone came together, and I just want to say thank you. And again, our heart breaks as a community. This is a day that no community would want to go through. We would not, especially those staff that were there, of course those that were injured, the families of those that were injured. Our thoughts and prayers are with them. And again, I just want to thank everyone that has responded to assist us. And at this point, I'm going to ask that Wright County Sheriff Sean Derringer talk about his agency's part in this investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I would like to echo Chief Budke's words. It's heartbreaking dealing with, we're 3 or 4 hours after the initial call for this incident, and I think we're still a little bit surprised. We never hoped for something like this to happen in our backyard, and our hearts and sympathies and certainly our prayers go out to the entire city of Buffalo and the entire Wright County area. As Mayor Lockemeyer alluded to, we're family here, and we don't want this to happen to our neighbors and our friends. So I will identify the suspect as Gregory Paul Ulrich, L-U-R-I-C-H. He's 67 years old. He is from Buffalo. We have had several calls for service regarding Mr. Ulrich dating back to 2003, both the Buffalo Police Department and the Wright County Sheriff's Office. So he's no stranger to law enforcement. Certainly I would go back to Chief Budke, as we all respond to a call like this, right? Buffalo Police Department doesn't have to put an all call out for assistance. We self-dispatch to that, and upon our arrival we also located several victims in this. It's a horrible looking scene, and our staff immediately began rendering aid to those victims. Once all the victims were removed from the premises, my team did a cursory secondary search of the building, made sure that no one else was in it. During this secondary search, we also found a suspicious package in the corner of the lobby. So we have contacted the Minneapolis bomb squad, and they are on scene right now helping us with that. Once that was taken care of, or once that was found, we evacuated our team members out of there in coordination with the Buffalo Police Department. My office quickly became apparent that we could probably use some help. We had several witnesses, obviously several victims. They're taken to several different locations, and so we've called in some detectives. Thank you, Sheriff Dave Hutchinson from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. He sent a team of detectives to my office north of Buffalo to help with those victim statements and the witness statements, so appreciate that. Also, out of an abundance of caution early on in this investigation, we did receive information that Mr. Ulrich was staying most recently at the Super 8 Motel here in Buffalo. We did send a team from my office over there to evacuate the Super 8 Motel. We did find additional suspicious devices at the Super 8 Motel. It's been evacuated. We've cleared the area. Just minutes before coming back here, I got a call update. We have search warrants are in hand. We are going to continue to work with the Buffalo Police Department, certainly our state and local partners, along with our federal partners, depending on where this investigation. We are certainly in the infancy of this investigation, but we certainly don't want to leave any stone unturned, and we want to make sure that we're being prudent throughout this entire investigation. We do believe that Mr. Ulrich did act alone. So a sigh of relief maybe for us in the law enforcement community and our community as a whole. We're not looking for any additional suspects. We believe that he acted alone, and so we've got time on our side. We can all gather the information. Once these scenes are secured, and we'll rely on the ATF and the Minneapolis Bomb Squad to tell us when those scenes are secure, we can start the tedious process of making sure that we document to the best and fullest of our ability. So again, I would echo the comments from Chief Budke, that our heart goes out to this entire community. It's we in the law enforcement community don't wish this upon anyone, and it's with a heartfelt, prayerful message to the community that we will do everything that we can to bring this to a closure. I'd also like to thank our other local, state, and federal partners that have showed up. I've had many conversations with several of our surrounding police chiefs and sheriffs, and the help that's being offered is exponential, and certainly it means a lot to have those relationships developed at a time like this when we need it the most. So we will continue to update to the best of our ability, as this investigation is certainly in its infancy, and we'll continue to gather information certainly as the days and weeks progress. So we'll continue to update to the best of our ability. So thank you all for being here and taking part of this. I would like to turn it over actually to the Buffalo Hospital President, Kelly Spratt.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Spratt, S-P-R-A-T-T. And I am the president for Allina Health Buffalo Hospital. Let me just start by saying our prayers and our thoughts are with our staff and with the patients that we serve out here in this greater community and for the greater community as a whole. This obviously is a very challenging day for us out here and across the Allina Health family. And I want to emphasize family. I know the sheriff and the police chief just mentioned that is the way we look at this overarching community. So our hearts break, again, for the family, the patients that trust us with their care, and for the greater community. We had a total of 5 patients that were transported from the clinic, 4 of which went to North Memorial. It was the ultimate destination, 1 to Hennepin County Medical Center. 2 of them were initially transported to Buffalo Hospital. The other 3 left directly from the scene to those metro hospitals, being their level 1 trauma center. At this point, I do not have the most up-to-date information on the patient's conditions. And again, our thoughts and our prayers go out to them and their families, and to our staff across the Allina Health system. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor Terry. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. My name's Terry Lockemeyer, last name spelled L-A-C-H-E-R-M-E-I-E-R, and I'm the mayor of the city of Buffalo. And this is our family. These people were working together to make sure our community feels safe right now, that our community in Allina feels safe. Our hearts and prayers go out to the staff and the victims. And I just want to say, you guys, we're going to make it through this. It's going to be difficult. This doesn't happen in Buffalo, Minnesota, right? But we got to be there for these people that are needing us. We got to reach out, and in this time of COVID, where you can't physically hug someone, we need to reach out by phone and make sure everybody's okay, because it's a stressful time. So reach out, check on people, make sure they're okay, because in the bottom line, it's mental health that we're suffering from, and we have to make sure we're taking care of those people who are in need of our help. I want to thank everyone for being here. Again, my hearts and prayers go out to our community as well as the victims and the staff at Allina. I thank you all for coming, and I'm going to open it up to questions at this time.
When you said the 5 patients that were taken to the hospital, Kelly, you addressed that. Yeah. 5 patients that were taken to the hospital, were they patients at the clinic, or were they nurses and staff at Allina?
Yeah, at this point, because this is an active investigation, we're just not prepared to clarify that at this point in time. So there was 5 patients. 5 were transported ultimately to 4 to North Memorial and 1 to Hennepin County Medical Center.
But at this time, no one has passed away.
Again, at this point in time, I'm not prepared and don't have the latest conditions on their report.
Did the shooter say anything before shooting his weapon?
I'm going to turn that over to law enforcement here.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Did the shooter say anything, speak anything to people in the clinic before opening fire?
Again, it's very early in the investigation. There's a lot of information to be sifted through. I don't know at this point of any comments directly made by the shooter to anyone in the clinic.
Could you say what his motive is? Did he speak to that at all? It's not a nexus of domestic terrorism. What is it?
The history that we have as a department with this individual makes it most likely that this incident was targeted at that facility or at someone within that facility. We're working now, as has been said, to make sure that we throw a net over anything remaining. We want to retrace his last hours and determine where he was. But at this point, because of the contact that we have had with him and his familiarity and a history of conflict, that's where we base the belief that this wasn't isolated and only directed at that facility or people within that facility.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, Chief? Jessica Miles of Channel 5. Because it sounds like the other clinic in town too was familiar with this guy, and they had a mug of him, and they knew who he was.
Correct. He has lived in this community for quite a long time, and has had contact with healthcare within the community during that time. None of the information that we have, again, it's early on in the investigation, but none of the information that we have from our past contact with him would indicate that he was unhappy with or would direct his anger at anyone other than people within the facilities where he had been treated or where they had attempted to give treatment.
Was there a doctor in particular that he was focusing on?
Again, at this point, it's early on in the investigation, and so that's not something we're going to talk about.
Were there any bombs or explosive devices detonated? Because the way those windows went out, it doesn't necessarily look like gunshots.
Again, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that when we give you information, it's accurate. In a scene like that, as soon as we rendered aid and were able to make sure that there was no one else in that scene that needed our help, we backed out, evacuated the area as best we could. So again, that answer is one that we would hope to answer. That question is one that we would hope to answer in the coming days, but it's too early to tell.
How many shots were fired?
I have no idea.
Can
Sorry.
you just address the explosion or whatever you're looking into? Because throughout the day, we've talked about a shooting and then a half an hour later, an explosion. So if it's wrong, can you say that that's wrong?
I can say that that's wrong. I know that the call came out at 11:54.
10:54.
I'm sorry, 10:54. Sorry. And when I talk about an evacuation where law enforcement had at that point backed out, I don't have a specific time, but I know that no more than an hour had passed.
And there was no explosion inside that building?
There may have been prior to our being able to go inside and evacuate the building.
So you can't confirm it right now until
Correct.
they're done looking through
Correct.
it.
Can you talk a little bit about the people in the facility, in the clinic? Were they running out when this was happening? Were they sheltering in place? Were they hiding? What was staff and patients doing inside there? Do you know?
Yeah, so there is a lot that's unknown. All of the people within the building that we were able to speak with, we have spoken with, but that information again has to be part of the total investigation. In terms of people running out or what the reaction was, I know that Allina has a very comprehensive training response plan for things like this as a facility, and so I would guess, and it would be a guess, that there was a combination of responses by people, whether they were sheltering in place or trying to exit the building. I'm sorry.
Can you talk a little bit about those other explosives that were found at the, or Do you know what the intended target of those were? Do you know?
Yeah, and we don't know or can't confirm what those devices were, or really anything about what the intention behind those devices might have been until we're able to complete the investigation.
Were they similar to the one that was found at the clinic?
I'm sorry?
Were they similar in nature to this device?
I'm sorry, I don't know that.
Are you able to say more about the previous encounters with him and this kind of tie-in with healthcare workers going back to 2003? How many times? What were the kind of demeanor, I guess?
Yeah, I don't have specifics as far as the number of contacts, that negative contacts or positive contacts that he would have had with healthcare workers.
All right, well, we've clearly lost our shot there. Is it back?
With the health care that he received.
There it is.
There's also, within that history, nothing to indicate that that we would have been in the situation that we are at today.
Two questions left. John, hold on here. Chief, does he have a criminal record, number one? And then can you tell us a little bit more about him? Does he have a job in town? Does he have...
Again, we're early on in the investigation, and I don't want to speak about where he might